Chapter 470. Yes, we are friends of Nyetian City Lord. Seeing that Nyetian calmed the Serpentine General down with just a few words, everyone shouted. At this moment, Diao Jingde, Mo Feng, Qiu Wuhan, and the others looked at each other and nodded. They stood up and said, General, we don't know Nyetian. He is the person you are looking for and has nothing to do with us. Please let us go. Let you go? Sha Qianlong's venomous, snake-like eyes swept across Diao Jingde's body as he sneered. You guys are also the ones who barged into the rising dragon-killing array, and you even killed this general's baby viper. You've done so many things, yet you want to leave just like that? Diao Jingde was extremely shameless. He pointed at Yao, Feek, Tawny, and the others and said, that big snake was killed by them. It has nothing to do with me. Diao Jingde's shamelessness had really reached a certain level. Everyone looked at him with extreme contempt. Master, this guy is really shameless to the extreme. We should really let him taste the 101 kinds of torture of our demon race. Corpse Luo, demon monarch, couldn't help but say, Idiot! Yet Tianlin glanced at Diao Jingde coldly. The chaotic abyss was full of danger. If he left now, he would definitely die. The crowd looked at Diao Jingde with contempt. They were puzzled. How did this guy become the red-clothed elder of the Alchemist Guild? Mo Feng and Qiu Wuhan looked at each other. The former stepped forward and said, General, if we don't want to go with you, are you going to force us to leave? We have no less than 10 Spirit Wheel Realm Martial Artists and 50 True Element Realm Martial Artists here. If we were to really fight, what if we really fight? Hearing someone threatening him, Sha Qianlang didn't wait for the other party to finish speaking. He took a step forward and immediately released a majestic force. Bang! Mo Feng didn't even have the strength to resist and was directly hit until he vomited blood. Mo Feng stabilized his body. His pupils suddenly shrank as he stared at the Serpentine General. His eyes were filled with fear. When the others saw that even the Mo clan's elder did not retaliate at all, they were filled with fear. When Sha Qianlang saw the reactions of the crowd, the mockery in his eyes deepened. He asked coldly, Is there anyone else who wants to leave? No one answered. No one dared to. The Serpent Man General before him was simply too powerful, and he could not afford to provoke her. Nyetian glanced at Mo Feng with disdain. The latter is an idiot. He doesn't know Sha Qianlong's strength at all, yet he foolishly came forward to threaten Sha Qianlang. Isn't he looking for a beating? Nyetian thought for a moment and said, General Qianlang, I really don't know many of the people here. If they want to leave, let them go. Huh? The crowd was stunned. They didn't expect Nyetian to speak up for them. Sha Qianlang frowned slightly and laughed coldly. Brat, are you ordering me around? It's not an order. It's just a suggestion. Whether I say it or not is my business. Whether you listen or not is your business. Nyetian smiled calmly. He looked at Sha Qianlang and said, Besides, they are of no use to you. Bringing them along will only be a burden, isn't it? Sha Qianlang stared at Nyetian, wondering why he was so calm. Just as he was about to speak, Sha Anna, who was beside him, said, General Qianlang, Her Majesty only asked us to find the 9-star Dragon Vein Master. The others are not important. Why don't you let them go? No, take them all away. Sha Qianlang suddenly roared. He seemed very angry. He wanted to let the others go, but he should be the one to take the initiative and not Nyetian's request. If he let them go just because Nyetian said so, he would lose face as a general. Nyetian glanced at Sha Qianlang, and the corner of his mouth curled up. He already knew that Sha Qianlang wanted to let them go, so he purposely provoked him so that he could take everyone away. This was the chaotic abyss. It was impossible for any team to survive if they left this place. Even a spirit wheel expert would most likely perish here. Nyetian saw that everyone came in together, so he couldn't bear to let them commit suicide. All right, we will listen to General Qianlang. Let's go. Don't let Her Majesty wait too long. Sha Anna also seemed somewhat helpless. Her shrewd eyes swept over Nyetian, feeling that she had fallen into this kid's trap. Sha Qianlang took out a black rhinoceros horn and blew it. The distant sound of the horn went deep into the ground. Immediately, a huge sailboat emerged from the ground and appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was stunned. They didn't know where the sailboat came from. Boom! The sealed sailboat opened. "Get on the sandboat," Sha Qianlang said coldly, and was the first to jump onto the sandboat. Nie Tian jumped onto the sandboat, and everyone followed. After everyone had entered the sandboat, boom! The top of the sandboat closed up again. It was completely sealed, but the inside of the boat was brightly lit. It must have used some kind of light source. "Let's go." Sha Qianlang blew the horn again. The sand boat was pushed by an external force, and it began to sink into the sand dunes. It's the sand snakes pushing the sand boat forward. Nie Tian heard the rustling sound outside the sand boat and immediately understood. The sand boat was pushed out from the ground by the sand snakes. Now they were also pushing the sand boat forward. It had to be said that other than his strength, Sha Qianlong's ability to control the sand snakes was also terrifying. "Mr. Nya, these Nagas won't hurt us, right?" Elder Yi sent a telepathic message to Nie Tian. He sounded worried. "I don't think so. Let's wait until we meet the Empress." Nie Tian replied faintly, telling Elder Yi not to worry. He was also looking forward to seeing how the Empress of the Naga tribe looked like. The speed of the sand boat was very fast. The sound of sand breaking could be heard from inside the boat. After Nie Tian confirmed that Rui Qinyu was fine, he looked at the faceless man. The latter was also fine. He had the 9-yang constitution. As long as he could withstand the blood devour, the 9-yang blood chi would be able to suppress the blood devour. The blood devour was a disaster for others, but it was good for the 9-yang constitution. After the 9-yang blood chi completely refined the blood devour, the faceless man's strength would increase. The faceless man was currently in the true element stage 9. Once he refined the blood devour, he could easily break through to the spirit wheel realm. Nie Tian did not try to find out the faceless man's true identity. He knew that even if he asked, the faceless man would not tell him. In fact, the faceless man and Rui Qinyu did not have much interaction. At most, they would look at each other without saying a word. At this time, Nie Tian walked to Sha Anna and asked cautiously, "Miss, can you let me see the spirit snake crystal that you mentioned just now?" "No," Sha Anna rejected decisively and said, "The spirit snake crystal belongs to the Empress. Without her permission, I can't show it to outsiders." Nie Tian smiled and said, "I'm already the owner of the 9-star dragon vein. I'm not considered an outsider." Sha Anna hesitated for a moment, but still said, "Whether the owner of the 9-star dragon vein is an outsider or not, it's up to the Empress to decide." Nie Tian was speechless. This little girl only had eyes for the Empress. She was very loyal. Chapter 471. Walala. The sand boat stopped and began to rise. The sound of sand being flipped could be heard, and the sand boat broke through the sand. Boom! The upper deck of the sand boat opened, and a majestic ancient city appeared in front of everyone. The ancient city in front of them was much taller than a human city, and it was very layered. All of it was built with huge stones that were dozens of meters tall. At first glance, it was so majestic that it made people want to worship it. It was hard to imagine how such a grand ancient city was built. Whoosh! The moment the sand boat opened, a snake spear suddenly pierced toward Sha Qianlang. Bang! Sha Qianlang reached out and grabbed the snake spear. He exerted force and broke it. He shouted, "Lunatic Sha, what are you doing?" The person who attacked Sha Qianlang was a huge man from the Naga race. Even though his lower body was that of a snake, he was still close to 3 meters tall when he stood up. He was almost twice the height of an ordinary Naga. This guy had a triangular head, and his face looked like it was half human and half snake, as if he had not fully evolved. There was a chain around his neck, and there were all kinds of skulls on it. Some belonged to humans, and some belonged to spiritual beasts. The guy who was called Lunatic Sha smiled at Sha Qianlang and said, "General Qianlang, long time no see. I wanted to test your strength." "Ridiculous!" Sha Qianlang shouted angrily. "You think you're qualified to test my strength? If it wasn't for your father, I would have killed you right now." "General Qianlang, you are exaggerating. I mean no harm. Sha Anna quickly stepped forward to persuade him and signaled for him to stop talking. Lunatic Shah was sensible. He looked at the other people in the sand boat and shouted, "Who is the 9-star Dragon Vein Master?" Nyetion's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect the 9-star Dragon Vein Master to be so famous among the Naga race. He jumped out of the sand boat and stepped forward. He said, "I am." Sha Qianlang saw that Nyetion had left and quickly followed him. He was nervous, as if he was protecting Nyetion, afraid that Lunatic Shah would do something out of line. Lunatic Shah was famous among the Naga race. It would be bad if he hurt Nyetion, the 9-star Dragon Vein Master. "You're the master of the 9-star Dragon Vein?" Madman Shah chuckled, but in the next instant, killing intent suddenly flashed in his eyes as he roared furiously, "I don't believe it!" Bang! As soon as his roar resounded, Madman Shah's piercingly cold palm slapped out towards Nyetion's face. The whistling sound of the wind blew past his ears, and a surging killing intent assaulted his face. Nyetion's pupils suddenly constricted. He didn't expect this person to directly attack. By the time he wanted to act again, it was already too late. At the critical moment, Sha Qianlang opened the space of his divine wheel and protected Nyetion. Madman Shah's attack landed on the space of his divine wheel and did not cause any damage. "Lunatic Shah, are you crazy?" Sha Qianlang was prepared for this. He looked at Lunatic Shah, who had a playful look on his face, and roared angrily. Nyetion was the person the Empress wanted to see. Moreover, the 9-star Dragon Vein was a sacred item of the Naga race. It was extremely important to the Naga race. If something really happened, even 10 heads of Sha Qianlang wouldn't be enough to compensate. Madman Shah actually ignored Sha Qianlang. He shook his triangular head and revealed a stiff smile. However, it was full of mockery. He sneered and said, "The master of the 9-star Dragon Vein only has this much strength? What's the point of hiding under someone else's protection? If you have the guts, then fight with me, Lunatic Shah." What an arrogant fellow. When Nyetion heard what Lunatic Shah said, his eyes narrowed slightly. This fellow had the strength of the 9th tier of true energy, while Nyetion only had the strength of a 4th tier giant spiritual. With such a difference in strength, no matter how much guts he had, he wouldn't be able to fight with him. Lunatic Shah stared at Nyetion and smiled again. He said, "You must think that I am bullying you. How about this? I will suppress my strength to the 4th tier giant spiritual. If we fight, it won't be considered bullying, right?" "Not interested." Nyetion Tianling replied coldly. If Lunatic Shah suppressed his strength to the 4th tier giant spiritual, he was confident that he could kill him in one move. However, this was meaningless. According to Sha Qianlang, Lunatic Shah had a father behind him. It seemed that even Sha Qianlang couldn't afford to offend him. Nyetion didn't want to provoke a powerful enemy for no reason. There were so many idiots in the world. If he saw one and taught one a lesson, it would really be tiring. "Brat, whether or not I am interested is not up to you to decide." Lunatic Shah sensed Nyetion's disdain. He roared and actually wanted to attack. "Lunatic Shah, are you done? Do you think I don't exist?" Sha Qianlang was furious. His divine wheel space forced Lunatic Shah back a few meters. He said in a deep voice, "If you dare to come forward again, I will kill you." Sha Qianlang had already sensed that there were several human experts behind Nyetion who were itching for a fight. If they started a war between the human race and the Naga tribe before meeting the Empress, it would be a dereliction of duty. "Brat, consider yourself lucky." Lunatic Shah didn't dare to go forward again. He threatened and left angrily. "Let's go." Sha Qianlang didn't care about him. He led Nyetion and the rest into the Naga city. The Naga city was bustling. It was no different from a human city. Looking over, there were wine shops, tea houses, and department stores on both sides of the street. "Look, it's humans." The appearance of Nyetion and the rest caused a commotion. The Naga tribe looked at them with surprise and curiosity. They pointed at them and commented on them. Nyetion laughed bitterly. In the Naga city, they had become monsters. After a while, Sha Qianlang brought Nyetion and the rest to the palace of the Naga tribe. The palace of a Naga tribe was much larger than the palaces of the humans. Not only could it not be compared to the palaces in the 3,000 small worlds, but even the various shrines in the heaven realm were inferior. Just the gate of the palace was hundreds of meters tall. It looked spectacular. Walking below it, one could feel how small they were. Soon, Nietian and the rest entered the palace and arrived at the main hall. Her Majesty is in the main hall. Only you can enter. Sha Qianlang stopped everyone in front of the main hall. He only allowed Nietian to enter. No way. Elder Yi was the first to object. He was very decisive. Take a good look at where you are. It's not up to you to decide. Sha Qianlang replied coldly. There was no room for discussion. At this time, Sha Anna's expression suddenly changed. She immediately said, General Qianlang, Her Majesty wants to meet this old man. Sha Qianlang was stunned. His face darkened, and he nodded unwillingly. Nietian and Elder Yi followed behind Sha Anna and entered the main hall. In the main hall, a graceful lady was sitting. She wore a crown on her head. She looked very dignified. A faint smile hung on the corner of her mouth, giving off a peaceful and approachable feeling. Her eyes were deep and unwavering, like the deepest ocean, boundless and limitless. The armored warriors on both sides of the main hall lowered their heads. They did not dare to look at the lady in the main hall. Chapter 472. Master! Corpse King's voice sounded, and Nietian woke up as if he was in a dream. His face was pale, and his heart was filled with horror. This woman was too scary. Just a glance was enough to make him fall into an illusion. This illusion realm seemed to be even scarier than the Deputy City Lord of Chaos City, Wanchiro. 9-star Dragon Vein Master, you are finally here. The woman in the hall revealed a smile that could topple cities on her exquisite face. Her voice seemed to have a strong magical power that was very enjoyable, making people want to sink into this magical voice forever. Without a doubt, the woman in front of him was the Queen of the Nagas, Medusa. Nietian bowed slightly and said, Greetings, Your Majesty. No need to stand on ceremony. Please take a seat. Queen Medusa smiled faintly, appearing to be approachable. This was a very charming woman. Every frown and smile showed nobility, and at the same time, there was no indifference that kept people 1,000 miles away. It was very rare. Nietian and Elder Yi sat down carefully. At this time, Cheyenne walked over and handed a colorful crystal ball to Queen Medusa. The latter glanced at the crystal ball, smiled faintly, and said, You are Nietian? Nietian nodded and thought to himself, That must be the spirit serpent crystal. It seems like it has the ability to record images. Queen Medusa learned my name from the images recorded by the spirit serpent crystal. Queen Medusa's beautiful eyes flashed, and she suddenly stood up. She walked lightly and slowly to Nietian's side. At this time, Nietian was shocked to find that the lower half of Queen Medusa's body was not a snake's body, but two legs like a human's. She looked no different from a human, and she was much more beautiful than most humans. Looking at Queen Medusa at a close distance, her beauty was simply breathtaking. Her exquisite face was like a lotus flower coming out of the water, and her skin was as tender as a young girl's. It made people want to pounce on her and bite her a few hundred times. It was hard to imagine that this was a Naga. Nietian had once heard that the experts of a Naga race could form a human body after reaching the heavenly evolution realm. Therefore, he guessed that Empress Medusa's strength should be at the heavenly evolution realm, and she had already formed a human body. Nietian. Empress Medusa lightly opened her fragrant lips. She was less than a meter away from Nietian. A strange fragrance filled the air, causing one's mind to be stirred. Nietian felt his heart tremble. He was so nervous that beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He didn't dare to look into his opponent's eyes again. His opponent was far stronger than him. Queen Medusa's eyes were a deep azure blue, like the deep green sea. Just one look would cause one to turn to stone. She smiled elegantly and said, You don't have to be nervous. This Empress just wants to see what's so special about someone who can break the rising dragon killing formation. Nietian took a deep breath and forced a smile. Have you noticed the difference, Your Majesty? Yes. Empress Medusa nodded with a smile and said, "There's a power in your body that makes this Empress wary. The power of the stars." It wasn't strange that Empress Medusa could sense the power of the stars in Nietion's body. However, she said it so bluntly, which made Nietion feel a little strange. After calming down, Nietion didn't want to waste any more time. He said directly, "Your Majesty, I broke the rising dragon killing formation and obtained the 9-star dragon vein. What do you want to do with me?" Empress Medusa smiled and said, "I want you to do me a favor." A favor? Nietion was slightly stunned, and his heart sank. He knew that the Empress Medusa, who seemed amiable on the surface, was definitely not that simple. Empress Medusa's favor was definitely not a small matter. Nietion was puzzled. What was it that even Empress Medusa couldn't do and still needed his help? Yes, Empress Medusa smiled faintly, and her gaze suddenly landed on Elder Yi. She said, "If you help this Empress will remove the demon's sealing curse for him." Elder Yi and Nietion were stunned at the same time. They didn't expect Empress Medusa to know about the demon's sealing curse. Elder Yi was a little excited. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. Nietion signaled Elder Yi to calm down. He wanted to see what Empress Medusa would offer first. Empress Medusa saw that Nietion was interested, but she smiled and said, "But before that, this Empress needs to see your strength." "As you wish." Nietion nodded. He had already expected this. A moment later, Empress Medusa brought Nietion and Elder Yi to a huge plaza. Blood Death Field? The plaza in front of him reminded Nietion of the great Chu Heavenly Prison's Blood Death Field. The circular plaza was surrounded by huge iron bars. There were also armored warriors guarding it. Each warrior's strength was above the 5th level of true element. "Pa! Pa!" Empress Medusa clapped her hands twice. Then, a figure fell from the sky and landed heavily on the plaza, raising a cloud of dust. Madman Shah. Seeing the figure appear on the plaza, Nietion's face slightly darkened. "Nietion, you've already met him, haven't you? I want to introduce him to you." Queen Medusa smiled, looking harmless. Nietion frowned and complained in his heart. Empress Medusa wouldn't use Madman Shah to test him, right? This guy was a 9th-level true element martial artist. Empress Medusa saw Nietion's worry and smiled. "Don't worry. This Empress has suppressed his strength by an entire realm. This way, you won't be at a disadvantage." "That's good." Nietion took a deep breath. With the suppression of an entire realm, Madman Shah's strength was only at the 9th level of Giant Spirit. In front of Nietion, he could only be beaten. "Your Majesty, I didn't hold back. If I hurt him, will there be any trouble?" Nietion suddenly asked with a strange smile. Queen Medusa was taken aback at first, but then she smiled and said, "Nietion, you're underestimating Shafone. He's a genius of our clan. Even if his strength is suppressed by a major realm, he's still far stronger than you. It's not wise to underestimate your opponent." "Shafone, Madman Shah's name. Smelly brat, you talk big. Let's fight, life or death." Hearing Nietion's words, Shafone roared in anger. Being looked down upon by a human martial artist, Shafone couldn't bear it. "Okay." Nietion smiled faintly. His figure flashed and landed in front of Shafone. The surrounding Serpent Men warriors looked at Nietion with disdain. Madman Shah was infamous in the Serpent Men tribe. Nietion was just a mere 4th-level giant spirit. It was impossible for him to be Madman Shah's opponent. "Smelly brat, you had Sha Qianlang protecting you just now. Let's see who else can help you now." Sha Feng's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He couldn't wait to tear Nietion apart. "Fool!" Qianling spat out these 2 words. He had already made up his mind to end the battle in one move. He knew that Madman Shah was just a way for Medusa to test his strength. The stronger he showed, the more importance Medusa would place on him. This would be very helpful in the upcoming negotiations. "You're courting death." Shafone was enraged. His black snake spear pierced through the air, condensing into a giant phantom spearhead in the air, pressing down on Nietion. Nietion immediately felt a gust of wind blowing against his face. The corner of his mouth curled up. He ignored it and stabbed out with his sword. Chapter 473. Sha Feng spat out a mouthful of blood. His body drew a perfect arc in the air before crashing heavily onto the ground. Amidst the bloody light, Nietion did not stop at all. With a light tap of his toes, his figure moved, and he directly left. He appeared next to Queen Medusa as if nothing had happened. Everyone was petrified, and the atmosphere was dead silent. No one had expected Nietion's sword to be so powerful. One sword. Just one sword was enough to completely defeat Sha Feng. In the Naga tribe, Sha Feng was not only a lunatic, but also a genius. He was already at the 9th level of true element before the age of 30. Even if his strength was suppressed by Queen Medusa to the 9th level of Giant Soul, he was still much stronger than Nietion, who was only at the 4th level of Giant Soul. Even so, he still could not withstand Nietion's sword. The master of a 9-star dragon vein is indeed extraordinary. After a while, Queen Medusa's expression eased up, and she forced a smile. Nietion could tell that the smile on her face was very unnatural. Nietion wanted to shock his opponent with this sword, and the effect was not bad. He could see it from Queen Medusa's stiff expression. "What terrifying strength!" a Naga martial artist exclaimed. At this time, everyone finally reacted. Impossible. After a while, Sha Feng's angry roar resounded in the square. He looked at Nietion with bloodshot eyes, as if he wanted to continue fighting. However, when he noticed Queen Medusa beside him, his aura immediately dissipated. In the Naga tribe, Sha Feng was not afraid of anyone, but he definitely did not dare to be arrogant in front of Queen Medusa. "Your Majesty, are you satisfied with our performance?" Nietion smiled playfully and secretly glanced at Queen Medusa. Empress Medusa regained her gentle and noble demeanor. She sent a voice transmission to Nietion. "I didn't expect you to be a sword heart swordsman, and your sword chi seems to contain 2 types of power. Although these 2 types of power are fused together, they can still be separated. If I'm not mistaken, you are a dual sword heart swordsman." This time, it was Nietion's turn to be stunned. Dual sword heart, this was one of his secrets. Although Nietion had used sword chi in front of many people so far, Queen Medusa was the first one who could see that he had dual sword hearts. Thinking back to how he had fallen into an illusion with just a single glance, Nietion felt much more at ease. Since Queen Medusa was a master of illusion, it was understandable that her perception was different from ordinary people. "Your Majesty, please keep this a secret from me," Nietion said sincerely. Dual sword heart. This was a legendary swordsman. If people knew about this, Nietion would definitely become the target of public criticism. Therefore, it was better to keep this matter a secret. Empress Medusa nodded slightly. She had transmitted her voice to Nietion to keep the secret for him. After leaving the square, Queen Medusa arranged for Nietion and the other warriors to stay in the palace and allowed the other warriors to leave. The people from the Mo family, the Chiu family, the Alchemist Guild, and many other teams chose to leave. The people from the Tang family, the Gu family, the Martial Arts Merchant Union, the people from the Great Chu Empire, and the people from Chaos City chose to stay. Half of them left, and the other half stayed. In the next 3 days, Nietion and the others had been resting. The injured warriors had basically recovered from their injuries, and the others also seized the time to cultivate. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the Chaos Abyss was dozens of times richer than the outside world. Cultivating here for a day was equivalent to cultivating for half a month in the outside world. Nietion was not in a hurry and waited for Queen Medusa to find him. After half a day, Queen Medusa's personal guard, Sha Anna, appeared and brought Nietion and Elder Yi to a secret place in the palace. The 3 of them came to a secret room. Sha Anna gestured for Nietion to enter, but stopped Elder Yi and said, "Her Majesty will only let Lord Nietion enter alone. You and I can wait outside." Elder Yi nodded solemnly. Nietion entered the secret room and saw Queen Medusa again. At this time, Queen Medusa had taken off her phoenix crown and robe and changed into a green dress. However, her beauty did not dim because of this. Instead, she seemed more amiable and had a fresh temperament that smelled like orchids. "Mr. Nietion, please take a seat." Empress Medusa smiled elegantly. Her every move revealed a unique charm that made it impossible for people to refuse her every word. Nietion smiled faintly and said, "Your Majesty, there are no outsiders here. If you have something to say, please say it." Queen Medusa nodded slightly. The smile on her exquisite face disappeared and was replaced with a pained expression. She said, "Mr. Nietion is a smart person, so this Empress will not keep you in suspense. You human martial artists come to the chaotic abyss with the intention of training and searching for treasures in the abyss. However, the vastness of the chaotic abyss is far beyond your imagination. Even the small Sumeru world that you live in is not even a third of the size of the chaotic abyss. So big." Nietion sucked in a breath of cold air. Although he already knew that the chaotic abyss was very big, he did not expect it to be this big. Although the 3,000 small worlds were only lower worlds, they still had a radius of more than 100,000 miles. The chaotic abyss was only an independent space-time left behind from the ancient war between gods and demons. It was already several times larger than the 3,000 small worlds. It was hard to imagine what kind of vast world the ancient martial artists lived in. Queen Medusa continued, "Although there are treasures passed down from ancient times in the chaotic abyss, it is impossible for you human martial artists to find them." Nietion nodded silently. The chaotic abyss was too big. Trying to find treasures here was like looking for a needle in a haystack. The chances were slim. "Your Majesty, if you have something to say, please say it," Nietion said, seeing that Queen Medusa had not finished speaking. Queen Medusa glanced at Nietion with her beautiful eyes and said, "This Empress knows of a secret territory with many ancient treasures. I can guide you there." "Oh," Nietion raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Does your Majesty think I am a 3-year-old child? If there really is such a secret territory, why don't you go there yourself? Why guide us?" Queen Medusa already knew that Nietion would ask such a question. She was not angry and said, "That secret territory is the place where an ancient demon saint fell. There's a restriction set up specifically to deal with the demon race. This Empress and other demon race members cannot enter. Only human martial artists can enter." Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. He gathered his courage and stared at Queen Medusa. He wanted to determine if the latter was lying. Queen Medusa looked at Nietion with her beautiful eyes. She did not avoid his gaze. Nietion was sure that she was not lying and said, "Your Majesty, there is no free lunch in this world. You must have a request for guiding us into the demon saint's secret territory. Tell us your conditions." Queen Medusa's beautiful eyes flashed with a look of pain, but she did not speak. Instead, she took off her clothes. Nietion was shocked. He did not understand why the latter was taking off her clothes and quickly moved away. "Mr. Nietion, look at my body and you will know." Queen Medusa's voice sounded. Nietion had no choice but to turn around. Chapter 474. The moment Nietion saw Empress Medusa's body, he was stunned. What appeared in front of him was indeed Empress Medusa's naked body. However, it was not the perfect body that he had imagined, but a broken body covered with cuts and bruises. Her sparkling and translucent skin was no different from that of a human girl, but it was covered with countless terrifying cracks and holes. Every crack was so glaring, and her skin and flesh were all twisted up, completely destroying a perfect body. What surprised Nietion even more was that the wounds on the body actually emitted a very bloody, evil aura. The evil aura seemed to seal some kind of terrifying power. After a while, Queen Medusa passed him a picture, and her beauty was restored. She said, "Mr. Nietion, as you can see, I am now at the end of my life, and I may die at any time." "I understand." Nietion suddenly understood something and said, "The chaotic abyss was opened by the Empress, right?" He had heard that the chaotic abyss opened at random times, but every time it opened, it would basically be 100 years apart. However, this time, it had only been a dozen years since the last time it opened. Clearly, it had opened early. Yes. Empress Medusa nodded lightly and did not deny it. Nietion immediately understood. He smiled coldly and said, "Then, as soon as we entered the chaotic abyss, we directly came to the rising dragon kill formation. This must have been arranged by Her Majesty." Empress Medusa nodded silently and said, "This Empress only wants to find someone who can break the rising dragon kill formation and enter the demon saint's secret realm. And, Mr. Nietion, you're the person this Empress is looking for." Nietion was silent. Empress Medusa's method of finding people was really strange. If it were not for Nietion, it was estimated that 200 to 300 martial artists would have died in the rising dragon kill formation. And with Empress Medusa's temperament, she definitely would not close the chaotic abyss. This way, there would be a continuous stream of human martial artists entering the chaotic abyss and entering the rising dragon kill formation until the person who could break the rising dragon kill formation appeared. It had to be said that Empress Medusa was really ruthless. The rising dragon kill formation was a big trap to kill human martial artists. If it were not for Nietion being the first to enter, who knew how many human martial artists would have died in the rising dragon kill formation? So that's it. Nietion understood this and looked at Empress Medusa with more caution. "Your Majesty, what do you want me to do? Please." Since the matter had been made clear, Nietion was no longer polite and said directly, "You have seen that the spiritual seal in my body is acting up. If I do not receive treatment now, I will be." Empress Medusa squeezed out a touch of sadness on her face and said, "The 9-star dragon vein could have saved my life, but I couldn't break the rising dragon killing formation. You've broken through the rising dragon killing formation and become the 9-star dragon vein master acknowledged by the rising dragon platform. It shouldn't be too much to ask you to help me, right?" "Huh?" Nietion was stunned and thought to himself, "You snake spirit, could it be that you want to eat me?" The 9-star dragon vein had already fused with Nietion's body. Even if Queen Medusa ate him alive, she wouldn't be able to save his life. Although he didn't know what the spiritualized seal was, Nietion could tell that it was definitely something that could kill Queen Medusa. Empress Medusa did not explain too much. Instead, she said, "I know that there is a herb called the 9 Revolution Spirit Ginseng in the demon Saint Mystic realm. It can suppress the spiritualized fiend seal. So I need you to enter the demon Saint Mystic realm and get me the 9 Revolution Spirit Ginseng. Your Majesty, the sacred beast realm must be extremely dangerous, right? Presumably, the number of human warriors who had fallen there was uncountable. Do you really think that with my strength, I'll be able to come out alive after entering the secret territory?" Nietion smiled faintly and said playfully, "The Chaos Abyss was already extremely dangerous, and the sacred beast realm was even more unpredictable. If you were to foolishly work for Empress Medusa, it would be too easy for the latter. What do you want? Just say it." Since both sides had made everything clear, there was no need to waste any more time. Empress Medusa said directly, "First, the demon sealing curse on the person outside the secret chamber should be handed over to your Majesty. That's not too much, right?" Nietion smiled faintly. He was best at demanding an exorbitant price. "No problem." Empress Medusa agreed without hesitation. Since she could recognize the demon sealing curse on Elder Yi, there must be a way to remove it. "Second, everything in the sacred beast realm, apart from the destiny spirit ginseng, belongs to me," Nietion continued. "Of course." Empress Medusa agreed immediately. "Is there a third condition?" "Of course." Nietion laughed and said, "Third, I want to freely enter and exit the Chaos Abyss without being restricted by whether it's open or not." This, Empress Medusa hesitated when she heard Nietion's request. She thought for a moment and said, "I can tell you a space-time crack that's permanently open in the Chaos Abyss, but you have to promise that only you can enter and exit it. You can't tell anyone else." Nietion raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Dear Your Majesty, I can't promise that." Empress Medusa was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect Nyation to be so difficult to deal with. She immediately took a step back and said, "The Chaos Abyss is an isolated world. If a large number of human warriors are allowed to enter, it will definitely arouse the opposition of other demons. I can promise that I won't bring a large number of warriors into the Chaos Abyss." Before Empress Medusa could finish speaking, Nyation interrupted her and said, "Good." Empress Medusa stared at Nyation for a moment and finally nodded. "I agree to these 3 conditions. Your Majesty, don't be anxious. I haven't finished saying my conditions." Nyation smiled faintly with a satisfied expression. "You still have conditions?" Empress Medusa was a little speechless. Her noble temperament was a little messed up, but she still calmed down and said, "Continue." Nyation rolled his eyes twice and said, "I haven't thought about it yet, but Your Majesty, you must remember that you still owe me a condition." Empress Medusa's expression was stiff. It was the first time she saw a human warrior being so greedy. "All right, Your Majesty, don't be so angry. When are we leaving?" Nyation smiled faintly with the attitude of a winner. The snake spear in front of her almost killed Nyation and the others. It wouldn't be too much to let her be angry for a while. Spirit Ginseng of Destiny. Empress Medusa's expression softened slightly. She whispered softly and opened her palm. A colorful light gushed out and condensed into a colorful flower in her palm. "This is the Spirit Ginseng of Destiny. Remember what it looks like." Empress Medusa looked at Nyation with a dignified expression. When the latter nodded, she dispersed the phantom in her palm and said, "The demon saint's secret territory is extremely dangerous. Countless human warriors have entered before, but no one has come out alive. I hope you can create a miracle this time." Chapter 475. The next day, Nyation and all the human warriors left the ancient city on a sandboat. Empress Medusa trusted him and allowed all the martial artists to leave. Nyation told all the warriors about the demonic saint's secret territory, only hiding the fact that he was going to enter the secret territory to obtain the destiny spirit ginseng for Queen Medusa. All the warriors who didn't want to stay in the chaotic abyss were sent away by Queen Medusa. The others expressed their willingness to enter the demonic saint's secret territory with Nyation. Although the demonic saint's secret territory was extremely dangerous, the ancient treasures inside were even more tempting. Queen Medusa even revealed that there was an ancient inheritance of the demonic saint in the secret territory. The inheritance of the demonic saint was definitely something that everyone would go crazy over. Half a day later, the sand boat reached the edge of the desert. "Lord Nyation, the place in front of us is called the Destiny Netherwoods. The demon saint's arcane realm is in there." Sha Qianlong's attitude towards Nyation was filled with respect as he pointed at the woods in front of them. What a powerful restriction! Even before entering the Destiny Dark Forest, Nyation had already sensed a powerful restrictive aura blowing towards him. It seemed to have the effect of suppressing a martial practitioner's strength, which was very similar to the restrictive aura he had sensed in the Burial Cloud Abyss. Nyation City Lord, the forest ahead is a bit strange. It seems to have a suppressive force on a 5th-level true element realm martial artist. Yao Fei's mental power was far above Nyation's, so he said after feeling the strong restriction aura. Sha Qianlang said, "Lord Nyatan, the Destiny Woods does not allow the Naga tribe to enter. We will wait for you here." "All right," Nyation answered. Then he led all the human cultivators out of the sand boat and into the Destiny Dark Forest. In the woods, the light was dim and the air was thick, making it difficult to breathe. After entering, everyone felt a cold and gloomy aura coming towards them. The surrounding trees were tall and dark, like the guards of the woods, calm and gloomy. Nyation spread out the map of the secret territory given to him by Queen Medusa and confirmed a route. After another half a day, everyone arrived at a dark canyon in the woods. The sky was filled with dark clouds that seemed to swallow people whole. Why is this a graveyard? Upon entering the dark valley, Nyation found himself in front of a graveyard, which puzzled him. According to the markings on the map, this should be the location of the secret land. With doubts in his mind, Tion flashed into the cemetery and arrived in front of the tallest tombstone in the center of the cemetery. For words were engraved on it. Fated demon saint. It's here. Tion raised his hand, and a wisp of weak flame appeared in his palm, which he drew directly from the tombstone. Everyone was stunned when they saw the flame in Tion's hand. Tion laughed and thought to himself, "It seems that my luck is not bad. There is actually an earth demonic flame hidden under this tombstone." The earth core demonic flame was the 17th demonic flame on the demonic flame list. Although it was not the best demonic flame, and it was impossible for it to be the true form of the demonic flame, it was already good to encounter a wisp of it. With the geocentric demonic flame, Tion's trip was not in vain. His gaze swept across the tombstones in front of him. Could it be that there were treasures under all the tombstones? If that was the case, he would really be rich. Suddenly, Tion saw Tawny. On her face that was hidden under the veil, there seemed to be something red flashing between her eyebrows. He was puzzled. Tawny should be a member of the Red Lotus race in the Devil World. How could she enter the Destiny Forest? The Destiny Forest had restrictions on all demons, forbidding them from entering. Gu Wuyo was able to enter because of her human bloodline, but why could Tawny enter as well? Is she not a member of the Red Lotus tribe? Tion suspected for a moment, but immediately gave up. Now was not the time to think about what kind of person Tawny was. Bang! Suddenly, there was a loud noise in the distance. A tombstone actually flew into the air. It was forcibly blown up by the power of the ground and then hung in midair. Everyone looked over, and a strange scene appeared. The soil on the ground turned over, and a pair of withered and pale hands came out. The atmosphere became gloomy, and a chilling aura enveloped the surroundings. Bang! 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 Then more tombstones flew up and hung in the air. Countless withered and pale hands appeared on the ground, and a strong and pungent smell of corpses spread out. Soon, countless mummies came out of the ground. A pair of hands supported the ground, and their shriveled, skull-like heads lifted up. Their entire bodies immediately stood up. At a glance, the entire graveyard in the canyon was filled with mummies that had just crawled out of the ground. This scene was very horrifying. Even those with a strong mind couldn't help but be frightened. Bang! Someone couldn't help but attack the mummies. With one palm, one of the mummies was directly smashed into pieces. He couldn't help but laugh wildly. Everyone, don't be nervous. These mummies have no fighting power at all. Let's attack together and destroy these mummies. Seeing this, the crowd relaxed a lot, but the next moment, their smiling expressions stiffened. In the air, the corpse that was smashed into pieces turned into a ball of corpse chi. Then, it condensed back into a human form. Then, a cold smile appeared on the corner of its mouth. Its figure floated in the air like a ghost or a demon. It was hard to catch. An incomparably shrill scream was heard. When the person attacked, the blood vessels in his body suddenly collapsed, and his entire body suddenly exploded, turning into a ball of blood in the air. And the mummies that attacked him actually absorbed his blood chi and yuan chi. Gradually, the shriveled face swelled up, and a trace of blood appeared, and it became more like a human shape. Immediately, miserable screams sounded one after another, echoing in the graveyard, adding to the eerie coldness. The mummies seemed to have gone crazy, and they attacked the martial artists like shadows. Those martial artists who were attacked all exploded and died. In the blink of an eye, many of the mummies began to take human shape, and the corners of their mouths curved up into cold smiles. Blood sacrifice, soul rebirth technique. In the chaotic original coffin, the corpse demon king's trembling voice sounded. What technique is this? The corpse demon king was from the demon world, so it was not surprising that he knew this kind of evil technique, and yet Tion quickly asked. The corpse demon king said, "Master, this is a kind of soul rebirth technique of the demon world, and it is one of the demon world's 7 great forbidden techniques. Even I can't use it. These mummies used the martial artist's blood chi and yuan chi to restore their souls and bodies. Restore their souls and bodies. Tian sucked in a breath of cold air. Isn't that a technique that can bring the dead back to life and reverse life and death? These mummies are definitely martial artists from the ancient times, and who knows how strong they are. If they really come back to life, Tian and the others will definitely not be able to leave this place alive. Sword warp. At this moment, a familiar voice resounded. Tian followed the voice, and sure enough, it was the Ling Xian Tian Pavilion's assassin, Wen Hao. Chapter 476. A mummy turned into a ball of corpse energy and attacked Wen Hao. However, it was locked by the sword warp and weft space that Wen Hao created with his sword force. At this moment, everyone could see that the black corpse energy that the mummy transformed into was actually a hideous face of a ghost. It looked extremely eerie and terrifying. In the Tianming forest, everyone's strength was suppressed to below the 5th tier of primordial spirit realm. Spirit wheel realm warriors could not use the spirit wheel space, but swordsman's swordsmanship realm was not suppressed. Therefore, Wen Hao could use the sword warp that was comparable to Shinlin space. How dare you be so arrogant in front of the Grim Reaper? You are courting death, Wen Hao said without any mercy. The sword energy in his body gushed out and directly tore the mummy apart. This was the tearing of the soul, and the mummy turned into ashes on the spot. What a strong sword energy! The crowd exclaimed. No one would have thought that a person who had never been noticed before would actually show such heaven-defying strength at this moment. Tian frowned slightly and thought to himself, although he has the strength of the 9th tier of the giant spirit realm, his swordsmanship foundation is too strong. He has already reached the sword force realm. In the Tianming forest, he can fight anyone. Even a spirit wheel realm warrior may not be his match. Wen Hao is not affected by the restriction in the Tianming forest at all. As for the other warriors above the 5th tier of primordial spirit realm, the stronger their strength, the stronger the suppression. Therefore, Wen Hao, who specialized in swordsmanship, was not afraid of any opponent at this moment. However, Tian was not worried about him because Elder Yu was watching over him. Although Elder Yu was also suppressed, he was also a blade user at the Blade Spirit realm. At this moment, he still had the strength to kill Wen Hao with one slash. The blood-curdling screams were still ringing out one after another, causing everyone to panic. Let me destroy your nest. Tian calmed down and fixed his eyes on the tombstones that were suspended in the air. Even if he could not derive the sword warp of a swordsman, he could still kill the mummy. Everyone, don't panic. Destroy these tombstones, and those mummies will be finished. Tian shouted and took the lead. He struck out several sword shadows and directly smashed 5 to 6 tombstones into pieces. Sure enough, the tombstone shattered, and 5 or 6 dried corpses fell to the ground, unable to crawl back up. Tian had long discovered that the source of the corpse energy of these dried corpses was the tombstones. As long as the tombstones were destroyed, they would naturally not be able to be arrogant anymore. Seeing this, everyone followed suit. In the blink of an eye, the hundreds of tombstones overhead were all destroyed, and all the dried corpses disappeared. All that was left were pieces of rubble on the ground. Just when everyone thought that they could breathe a sigh of relief, the broken tablets suddenly emitted wisps of gray corpse energy. All the corpse chi gathered in the air, becoming more and more intense. Seeing this scene, the hearts of the crowd trembled. The gray corpse energy was so thick that it had turned black. It was like a thick fog that couldn't be dispersed, or like an embryo that was pregnant with evil. I don't care what you are, let's destroy it first. Tian sensed a strong threat from the gray corpse chi. Without hesitation, he stabbed out with his sword. The sword chi condensed into a strong killing intent and shot out like lightning. Bang! To everyone's surprise, there was an invisible barrier around the gray corpse chi, which blocked Tian's attack. Seeing Tian's attack, the others also followed suit. Bang! 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 Suddenly, countless attacks flew over, but were all blocked by the corpse chi barrier. What a strong, big barrier. Nietion's heart was cold. He jumped up and slashed down with his sword. With a loud bang, crack, a crack appeared on the corpse chi barrier. It's working. This crack made Nietion couldn't help but feel happy. However, it was already too late. The gray corpse chi had already condensed into a human shape. First, it was the hands, feet, and head, then more detailed fingers, toes, eyes, ears, mouth, and nose appeared. Bang! A haggard humanoid creature broke through the corpse chi barrier, like a baby bird breaking out of its shell. The corpse king let out a strange sound. His cold eyes flashed across everyone's body with doubt and confusion. Master, hurry up and kill him. He is a reborn corpse king. His divine soul is still not stable. If we wait for him to recover his divine soul, we will be in trouble. Corpse demon king shouted in panic. Yes. Nietion nodded heavily. The guy in front of him was a king-level character from the ancient god and devil age. If he really recovered his strength, who knew how terrifying he would be? One sword pierces the sky. Without hesitation, Nietion slashed out with his sword. 100-meter-long sword shadow slashed down, as if the heaven and earth were going to split. The corpse king frowned and then raised his hand. It was the most ordinary movement, but with the most decisive killing intent. In the void, a huge palm shadow appeared, pressing towards Nietion like a mountain. Nietion felt the power of this palm was extremely strong. After slashing out with his sword, a pair of proud sword wings appeared on his back. His figure hurriedly stopped, but he was still hit by the huge palm and was smashed to the ground heavily. When his feet landed on the ground, a huge pit was formed. Nietion's chest was stuffy, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was slightly pale. So strong. The Corpse King's power was beyond Nietion's estimation. He had just been reborn and was hesitating like a baby. If he was allowed to take a breath and recover his strength, it would be terrible. Roar! A deep roar came from the Corpse King's throat. Countless corpse chi surged out of his body, filling the air, and actually formed a huge corpse chi net. Ants, let your blood energy and origin energy become this king's sacrificial offering. The Corpse King's austere gaze swept across the crowd, his sinister and terrifying face revealing extreme madness. Ah, ah, ah. Shrill screams sounded, and dozens of figures were actually pulled into the air by the invisible corpse chi. Their bodies struggled with all their strength, but in an instant, their blood chi and yuan power were sucked dry, and they became dried corpses. This scene was too strange and too impactful. The crowd's expressions changed as they subconsciously retreated. Mr. Nya, are you okay? At this time, Elder Yi came to Nietion's side and asked with concern. Nietion waved his hand. Now that he had the 9-star dragon vein physique, as long as he didn't die in one hit, he could quickly recover. He hurriedly said, "Don't worry about me. Kill the Corpse King. Don't let him recover his strength." The Corpse King instantly sucked the blood chi and yuan power of dozens of warriors. At this time, no one knew to what extent his strength had recovered. If he really recovered completely, it would be a disaster. Elder Yi nodded, and the dark essence reverse blade struck out, and a boundless aura almost filled the entire graveyard. As the blade slashed down, the wind and clouds changed color, and heaven and earth wailed. Boom! The huge blade power fell, and the Corpse King actually felt danger. He wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The blade fell, and wherever the blade reached, the Corpse King was directly cut in half. Elder Yi was in the sword spirit realm, and he had comprehended the sword spirit true meaning. Even if his strength was suppressed, the power of the blade was still not small. Everyone looked at him with trembling eyes, especially Tawny, when Hao and the others, they glanced at Nietion as if they had given up on something. Chapter 477. In the air, the Corpse Demon Lord was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, he had finished harvesting and absorbed all the corpse aura. His fist-sized body had become the size of a fat cat after devouring the corpse aura of the King Corpse. After devouring the corpse aura, the Corpse Demon Lord immediately returned to the chaotic origin coffin. Everyone looked at Nyetian as if they were asking, "What is that? Why isn't it afraid of the corpse aura?" Nyetian only smiled and didn't explain anything. He looked at the crowd. There had been nearly 100 martial artists, but now there were only 30 or so left. More than half of them had died, even before entering the Beast Saint's secret realm. It seemed that this trip was extremely dangerous. Nyetian walked over to Tang 13, Duanmu Lu, Gu Wuyo, and the others and absorbed all the corpse aura that had invaded their bodies. They were only at the giant spirit realm. If it wasn't for Elder Ye's protection, it would have been difficult for them to avoid the King Corpse's attack. Even the Ghost Eye and the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus were not as useful as the Qi of true essence in the face of the invasion of Corpse Qi. This time, the Corpse Demon Lord was happy. He had absorbed a large amount of corpse aura for no reason, including the blood aura of dozens of giant spirit realm martial artists. If he could refine all of them, his strength should reach the peak of the true Yuan realm. After resting for a while and waiting for everyone to recover, Nyetian looked at the largest tombstone in the cemetery. All the tombstones in the cemetery had been destroyed, but this largest tombstone was untouched. This must be the entrance to the Beast Saint secret realm. Nyetian looked at the words, "Heaven's Mandate Beast Saint," on the tombstone and smiled. He could feel that there were restriction runes on the tombstone and the aura of the earth core, demonic flame below. "Mr. Yao, I'll have to trouble you to break this restriction." Nyetian smiled at Yao Fik. Since the latter was a spirit array master of the 3,000 small worlds, it should be easy for him to break a restriction that was hundreds of thousands of years old. Yao Fik nodded and jumped to the top of the tombstone. He reached out his hand and sent his divine sense into the restriction. A moment later, beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile as he descended. "Hua!" Yao Fik thrust out his palm, and a ball of light appeared around the huge tombstone, spiraling upwards. When the light reached the top of the tombstone, there was a loud bang, and the restrictive runes on the tombstone instantly exploded. An invisible energy swept past, raising tens of thousands of feet of dust. "It's broken!" Everyone was overjoyed. Boom! The restriction was broken, and with a loud sound, the tombstone began to sink. An underground passage appeared in front of everyone. "This is the entrance to the mystic realm." Everyone stepped forward. Some of them were already eager to try. "Mr. Yao, please." Nyetian gestured for Yao Fik to enter first. At the same time, he signaled for Elder Yi to follow and protect him. Yao Fei was a rank 6 spiritual array master, so him walking at the front was the safest method. Even the current Nyetian could not compare to him in terms of sensing danger. With Elder Yi by his side to protect him, Yao Fei's safety was guaranteed. Yao Fik smiled faintly and did not decline. He leaped in. The underground passage was wide enough for everyone to enter at the same time. Yao Fei was extremely careful, and every step he took was cautious. This was the place where an ancient demonic sage had fallen, who knew what terrifying things existed here. Even if he was a rank 6 spiritual array master, if he encountered an ancient killing array, he would die without a trace if he was not careful. Elder Yi followed behind Yao Fik with his nerves stretched taut. If there was any strange movement, he would immediately take action. Following closely behind Yao Fik, Wang Haoshuan asked cautiously, "Are there really ancient treasures in this place, Mr. Nye?" After entering the chaotic abyss, Wang Haoshuan finally understood how big the gap between him and Nyetian was. In the abyss, Nyetian had always been the one in charge, while he, the prince of the Great Chu dynasty and the former #1 genius of the North Sea, had been a nobody. Even when he had been on the Rising Dragon Arena, he hadn't been able to enter the 8th floor. Wang Haoshuan really could not imagine how Nyetian could reach the highest floor of the Rising Dragon Arena so easily. Maybe there will be. Nyetian smiled faintly and ignored Wang Haoshuan. If Wang Haoshuan was a kind person, Nyetian would be willing to talk to him. Unfortunately, this guy was not much different from the Crown Prince, Wang Haorui. They both had a golden appearance, but were rotten inside. Nyetian despised people like this from the bottom of his heart. Wang Haoshuan sensed Nie Tian's alienation and did not speak anymore. After walking for several hundred meters, they realized that this wasn't a passageway, but a naturally formed cave wall. Yao Fei had been walking at the front all along, but his expression gradually changed. Among this group of people, his mental strength was the strongest, and his perception was also the strongest. Therefore, he could sense the existence of danger immediately. Yet Tian also sensed something at this moment, and his expression froze slightly. The aura of the geocentric demonic fire seemed to have become much stronger. "Mr. Yao, are you all right?" Elder Yi saw that Yao Feek had suddenly stopped and could not help but ask. "There's a very strong aura surging over in front. Everyone be careful." Yao Feek's eyes focused, and his divine senses probed. They were already thousands of meters away. His mental strength was as high as level 65, and he could clearly sense even the slightest movement within 5,000 meters. Everyone held their breaths, quietly waiting for Yao Feek to speak again. "There's a murderous aura." Suddenly, someone exclaimed. It was Gu Qiolong. In the next moment, everyone felt an extremely strong, murderous aura, covering the sky and earth, rolling over. Nie Tian suddenly heard a buzzing roar, like a black swarm of locusts. His expression changed drastically, and he suddenly understood something. He shouted, "Everyone rush forward!" As soon as he said that, he was the first to rush out, sprinting toward the other end of the cave passage. "Everyone charge!" Yao Feek followed closely behind Nie Tian. He did not ask anything, and his first reaction was to believe in the latter's judgment. The others also came to their senses and hurriedly sprinted after him. After a while, everyone heard the buzzing sound slowly becoming louder, almost becoming a huge roar, as if there were countless insects chirping in their ears. "Charge!" Nie Tian felt the murderous aura surging over in front of him. He shouted angrily, his voice slightly trembling. Not far ahead, a wide open space appeared. As long as they rushed there, they would be much safer. Squeak! Buzz! As soon as Nie Tian's voice fell, an ear-piercing sound came from all directions. In the air in front of them, countless black things flew over at high speed. "Oh my God! What's that?" Someone shouted in panic and actually turned around to run back. But tragically, there was also the same black thing behind him, blocking his way back. Puff, puff, puff. Then there was a crisp sound in the air, and those black things suddenly emitted a green, phosphorescent light. At this moment, everyone finally saw what those things looked like. Chapter 478. "It's the green flame bats," Corpse Lord exclaimed from the chaotic original coffin. "Green flame bats. Why do the green flames on their chests have the aura of the earth demonic fire?" A cold light flashed in Nie Tian's eyes. He vaguely felt that something was wrong. These green flame bats looked extremely ferocious. Their numbers were overwhelming. They were definitely more difficult to deal with than the sand snakes. The green flame bats are third-rank spiritual beasts, but these green flame bats have devoured the earth demonic fire. They are equivalent to fourth-rank spiritual beasts. "Master, you must be careful. The demonic fire on their chests can burn everything. Once it touches you, you will not be able to get rid of it." Nie Tian nodded. He had also heard that the earth demonic fire was a strange demonic fire. It was extremely sticky. Anything that came into contact with the demonic fire, even if it was just a tiny bit, would eventually be burned into nothingness. Nie Tian was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. He had already come into direct contact with the green flame bats. He swung his sword. Sword chi gushed out and blasted out a narrow path. Then, he rushed forward without any regard for his own safety. Nie Tian did not dare to be careless. He activated the extreme with Jade Sky armor to prevent himself from being attacked by the green flame bats. "Everyone be careful. Don't let the green flame bats get close to you." Nie Tian shouted to remind everyone. What an annoying little thing. Unfortunately, it was too late. Some warriors had already been touched by the earth demonic fire. They were desperately slapping their arms, trying to extinguish the demonic fire. Once the earth demonic fire touched them, it would definitely burn everything it touched into nothingness. It was impossible to extinguish it. Ah, my arm. In the blink of an eye, the warrior's arm had already turned into ashes. He screamed in pain. Everyone rushed forward. Don't worry about him. At this moment, Nyetian could no longer care about anything else. He shouted and opened a path with his heaven/sword, leading everyone forward. Elder Yi saw that the green flames were extremely strange. He quietly opened the divine wheel space and protected Duanmu Lu and the others. Seeing that the warrior had been completely burned into ashes by the demonic fire, everyone's hearts trembled. They rushed forward even more desperately. The green flame fire bats were like a colony of ants. Even if Nyetian's sword chi was terrifying, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Nyetian City Lord, let me do it. Yao Fei took the initiative to take the vanguard position. A rank 5 spiritual array enveloped Yao Fei's body, and the formless energy of the array surged forth, creating a path of blood. His rank 5 spiritual array was extremely domineering. All the azure flame bats that charged at him were slapped to death by the array's power. Countless azure flame bat corpses danced in the air. Nyetian saw the earth core demonic fire escaping from the corpse of the green flame bat. Of course, he would not let it go to waste. His sword chi turned into a net of imprisonment, trapping the demonic fire and directly absorbing it with his body. The devouring power of the ownerless demonic flame was much weaker and could be absorbed directly by the martial artist. Seeing this, the others also followed suit, desperately absorbing the earth core demonic fire. Just as everyone was absorbing the demonic flames, Yao Fei's figure suddenly stopped, and the others stopped as well. Towering cliffs. Nyetian focused his eyes and saw that they had already arrived at a wide open space. But what appeared before them was actually a cliff. They seemed to have entered a cave on the cliff of a steep mountain. On one side of the cave was a tombstone, and on the other was a towering cliff. Buzz! The azure flame bats pressed over like a thick cloud, almost pushing everyone off the cliff. Jump! Nyetian immediately made a decision and roared. If they continued wasting time with these azure flame bats, they would definitely be devoured by them in the end. It was better to jump off the cliff and find a way to survive. Yao Fei nodded his head heavily and signaled to Wang Haoshuan. The two of them jumped down first. Yao Fei's rank 5 spiritual array was extremely strange. After falling for a few thousand meters, it directly stopped in the air. Over 30 martial artists jumped down the cliff. Most of them were true element realm martial artists, and they condensed their true yuan to maintain their balance in the air. Duanmu Lu and Gu Wuyo were both giant spirit realm martial artists. True yuan surged out from Elder Ye's body, allowing them to stabilize in the air. The azure flame bats did not chase them out of the cave. It's probably because we entered the cave and disturbed them. Nyetian smiled bitterly, a look of joy on his face. What is that? At this moment, Tang 13's voice suddenly sounded. She looked up at the sky with a shocked expression. Everyone looked up and were instantly stunned. Above the sky, in a seemingly empty space, endless rainbow-colored light spread out, forming a magnificent spectacle. At the periphery of the rainbow divine light, countless halos of light circulated in the surroundings like guardians, and at the center was actually a strange flower that was clear as if it had been washed. Countless layers of petals bloomed, and the flower in the center was constantly changing colors. It was dazzling and incomparably gorgeous. At this moment, everyone's hearts stopped breathing. It was as if they were pilgrims seeing the true God they had revered for a long time. Their expressions were filled with reverence, and their hearts were filled with worship. What is this thing? After a long time, someone shouted in a trembling voice. It was everyone's first time seeing such a magical thing. One could imagine the shock in their hearts. 10 seconds later, Niet Tian's expression froze. For words came out of his mouth. Destiny Spirit Ginseng. That's right, this was the Destiny Spirit Ginseng that Queen Medusa wanted. Niet Tian was a person who had seen the world, but he had never seen a flower that grew in the sky. All this time, Nietion thought that the illusion flower blood lotus was magical enough. But the moment he saw the destiny spirit ginseng, he realized that the world was big and there were many strange things. This saying was too true. Even though the heavenly fate spirit ginseng was growing in midair, Nietion could sense with his soul awareness that there was an invisible spiritual root under its dazzling flowers, which was intertwined and stretched in all directions to absorb the spiritual power of heaven and earth. Oh my God! The root of the destiny spirit ginseng is a spiritual array. After observing for a long time, Nietion finally came to a realization. Those intertwined, invisible roots actually hid the terrifying intent of a spiritual array. It could absorb a greater amount of spiritual energy of heaven and earth and supply it to the destiny spirit ginseng, a flower that grew in the sky, and its roots could form a spiritual array. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed it. At this moment, Nietion finally understood why Queen Medusa was willing to agree to so many conditions for him to take the destiny spirit ginseng. This was simply an existence that surpassed a ninth-grade spiritual flower. If Queen Medusa obtained the destiny spirit ginseng, not only would she be able to suppress the illusionary spirit seal in her body, but she would also be able to improve her martial body and advance to a higher realm. At this moment, Nietion even had the thought of taking the destiny spirit ginseng for himself. But he was a man of his word. Since he had already promised Queen Medusa, he would not go back on it. A gentleman's promise would not be regretted in life or death. At this moment, even Nietion was tempted. Of course, everyone else also had the same idea. Everyone looked at the destiny spirit ginseng with red eyes, completely red. Chapter 479. Tawny and Wan Chiron were the first to react. They looked at each other and nodded at each other, as if they were telepathically connected. Nietion saw one thing from their eyes, killing intent. And this killing intent was immediately transferred to Elder Yi. Elder Yi wasn't a fool. Of course, he could see the changes in the other forces. He laughed wildly. This flower is a rare flower. Everyone wants it. Since that's the case, let's fight. The fated spirit ginseng. Just by feeling the extremely dense heaven and earth spiritual chi from afar, everyone wanted to worship it. Which one of the 30 martial artists here didn't want it for themselves? Yi Linyun, you're still as arrogant as before. Ma Qirong's gaze locked on old man Yi as she spoke sinisterly. She had an evil smile on her face, and dark golden characters appeared all over her body, forming a circle of light that surrounded her. Lock, reverse, chop, forbid, devour, kill. The 6 dark golden characters seemed to have a life of their own as they circled around Wan Chiron. Wan Chiron, it's really you. I didn't expect you to still be by Spirit Go's side after so many years. Elder Yi seemed to recognize Wan Chiron. He sneered without fear. This is Gu family's outer elder, Gu Jue, was shocked when he saw the dark golden characters around Wan Chiron. He said with a trembling voice, 6 words ghost language spell. Huh? Wan Chiron was slightly surprised. She sneered, I didn't expect someone to recognize the 6 words ghost language spell. I'll use you as a sacrifice to the ghost. Lock. As soon as the word lock was spoken, the ghostly words of sealing shot out a beam of black light that instantly appeared beside Gu Jue. Like a black snake, it locked Gu Jue in place, rendering him immobile. Chop. The next moment, before Gu Jue could react, Wan Chiron's voice sounded again. The ghost language spell shot out a dark light that swept past like lightning. Swoosh! Blood splattered in the air as Gu Jue's head flew off. His eyes were filled with endless fear and despair. The dignified outer elder of the Gu clan, an expert at the first tier of the Divine Wheel realm, was actually unable to retaliate at all. He was beheaded and died under the 6-word ghost language spell. What a terrifying ghost language technique. All the martial artists felt a chill run down their spines, their faces as stiff as ice. Elder Gu. It took Gu Qiulong a long time to react, and he let out an anguish howl. The Gu family, one of the 4 aristocratic families, had an outer sect elder killed just like that. Gu Qiulong felt as if a knife was twisting in his heart. "Get out of my way, little ant. I'm not interested in you at the moment," Wan Shirong said in a cold voice. With a light flick of her hand, she sent Gu Qiulong flying backward. "Bastard!" Gu Qiulin appeared and roared in anger. "Do you know that we are from the Gu clan? Can you afford to offend the 4 great clans? Die!" As soon as the insolent voice fell, a cold figure flew past. It was one of the 4 disciples of Wan Shirong. As the figure flew past like a ghost, Gu Qiulin felt a chill on his neck and blood spurted out. He opened his mouth with a pained expression. He wanted to say something, but not a single word came out. His figure was like a kite with a broken string, falling rapidly. Qiulin. After losing 2 family members in a row, Gu Qiulong's heart was in great pain. He desperately wanted to rush out. "You're courting death." Another figure behind Wan Shirong flew out with a long sword in the air, aiming straight for Gu Qiulong's chest. Boom! At the critical moment, a giant sword slashed down and forcefully blocked the figure, saving Gu Qiulong's life. "Gu Qiulong, calm down." The person who attacked was Nietian. He pulled Gu Qiulong back, and his eyes were so calm that it made people's hair stand on end. "Nietian, City Lord." Gu Qiulong wailed, and actually started wailing. Nietian looked at the man in front of him, who was even more beautiful than a woman, with a solemn expression. Who was Wan Shirong? She even dared to kill a member of the Gu clan. She didn't put the 4 great clans in her eyes at all. Wan Shirong didn't care about Nietian and the others. Her evil gaze was fixed on Elder Yi. Then, she glanced at the crowd and said expressionlessly, "Today, all of you will die." As the cold threat fell, everyone felt a gust of cold air enter their bodies. Her strength was too strange, and they couldn't resist her. "Wan Shirong, you are the arrogant one." At this moment, Elder Ye's voice rang out. "You lost me back then, and now you are still no match for me." As his mighty voice fell, it gave everyone an inexplicable sense of security. Thinking of the world-defying Wild Saber back then, everyone's expression softened a little. "Is that so?" The corners of Wan Shirong's mouth curled up, and she laughed. "Yulinian, the death chain is still on you. You will never be able to break the curse left by the Pavilion Master in this lifetime. I am already a warrior at the 6th tier of the Divine Wheel, and you are only at the 3rd tier of the Divine Wheel. Moreover, in this secret realm, your strength can only reach the 5th tier of the primordial element at most. How are you going to fight me?" As the insolent voice fell, Wan Shirong's exquisite face became hideous. There was no longer any sense of beauty, and it made people feel a fatal terror. "Pavilion Master?" Nietian was slightly stunned, and all the doubts in his heart were suddenly cleared up at this moment. Before coming to Chaos City, Nietian had heard Old Gu say that Chaos City might be the location of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. At this moment, hearing Wan Shirong, the Vice City Lord of Chaos City, address him as the Pavilion Master was equivalent to directly declaring that Chaos City was the nest of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. And the mysterious City Lord that had never appeared in Chaos City was the Pavilion Master of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. However, what Nietian did not expect was that the demon sealing curse on Elder Ye's body actually came from the Pavilion Master of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. It turned out that the good brother that Elder Yi spoke of was the leader of the #1 assassin organization in the 3,000 small worlds, the Pavilion Master of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Although he did not know what kind of enmity Elder Yi had with this mysterious Pavilion Master, Nietian knew that this enmity would definitely not be resolved until one of them died. "Wan Shirong, are you really that confident?" Elder Yi was fearless. The 2 death god's chains behind him flew in the air, making him look incomparably domineering. Wan Shirong smiled sinisterly and said, "Since I have already revealed my identity, then everyone here must die." After revealing her identity from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, Wan Shirong made the most extreme decision. "Kill everyone here." Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly. Although Wan Shirong's strength was at the 6th tier of the Spirit Wheel, She was also suppressed by the restriction, and her strength could only reach the 5th tier of the primordial spirit wheel. Why was she so confident that she could kill everyone here? Could it be that her 6 words ghost language spell is not affected by the restriction? Nyetian thought of the scene where Wan Chirong killed the Gu family elder just now. It was a complete massacre, and it did not seem like a battle between warriors of the same level at all. Tawny, your Scar of the Dusk eye has been opened, right? It's time to let it see the light of day. Wan Chirong looked at Tawny beside her, and the corners of her mouth curled into a sinister smile. Chapter 480. The moment Tawny opened her Scar of Dusk eye, everyone felt an inexplicable chill in their hearts. A shiver ran down their spines. The strange power of the eye penetrated all boundaries and acted directly on every cultivator's soul, causing them to feel a deep sense of fear. Scar of Dusk eye, seeing the 3rd eye between Tawny's brows clearly, which was like a scarlet sunset in the afterglow of the scorching sun, Nyetian's entire body shook inexplicably. His expression froze for a few seconds. One of the 10 great innate eyes, the 9th one, the Scar of Dusk eye. Nyetian really did not expect that Tawny had been wearing a veil not to maintain her mysteriousness, but to hide the Scar of Dusk eye. Previously, Nyetian had already seen a strange red light appear on Tawny's face. But how could he have guessed that it was actually the Scar of Dusk eye? At this time, Nyetian finally understood why Tawny, as a member of the Red Lotus clan of the Devil World, could ignore the restrictions of the Forest of Destiny. It was because she possessed the Scar of Dusk eye. Regarding the Scar of Dusk eye, Nyetian did not know much. He only knew that it was ranked 9th among the 10 great innate eyes. It was slightly lower than Rui Qinyu's rainbow pupil, which was ranked 7th, but it was higher than Great Emperor Zui's purple demon eye, which was ranked 10th. In his previous life, Nyetian had heard Great Emperor Zui mention the Scar of Dusk eye. It was said that it was a very special kind of eye, even stranger than the ghost eye. There had been people in the heaven realm who possessed the Scar of Dusk eye, but none of them had successfully activated it. It was precisely because no one had seen the power of the Scar of Dusk eye that it could only be ranked 9th among the 10 great innate eyes. However, no one knew its true power. Even people in the heaven realm could not activate the Scar of Dusk eye. How could Tawny, who was only a cultivator from the 3,000 small worlds, open the Scar of Dusk eye? Could it be my power of the stars? Nyetian suddenly thought of something and turned pale with fright. When the eye of the Scar of Dusk opened just now, the origin star stone in Nyetian's body had a strange reaction, as if it had sensed the same kind of power. When he thought about how Tawny had absorbed his power earlier, Nyetian immediately concluded that the activation of the Eye of Dusk Scar was definitely related to the power of the stars. Nyetian, City Lord. Tawny's voice rang out with a hint of demonic charm. Her long silver hair, fluttering in the wind, made her look even more seductive. She laughed softly and said, "It's all thanks to your 2 swords that I was able to activate my Eye of the Scar of the Dusk." As expected, Nyetian's heart sank, his face filled with anger. He was too careless and let Tawny take advantage of a loophole. But how could he have imagined that this person was actually someone who possessed the Eye of the Scar of Dusk? Nyetian knew that it was useless to blame himself now. He glanced around and paid more attention to Rui Qianyu and Tang 13. If there was anyone present who could restrict the Eye of the Scar of the Dusk, it would be Rui Qianyu's 9 colored pupils and Tang 13's ghost eye. But right now, Rui Qianyu was standing behind Wan Chirong, and she was the latter's disciple. Was she willing to fight against Tawny? "Tawny, don't waste words with him, attack." Wan Chirong ordered cold, her gaze locked on Elder Yi, and laughed sinisterly. "Yi Lin Yun, the heavens mandate forest will be your grave. Do you really think you can kill me?" Elder Yi was not afraid at all, and laughed wildly. "I, the world-defying Wildblade, have been unstoppable for hundreds of years. Even if I were to die, I would not die here. If you want to kill me, you should let Yue come personally." Yue, what Elder Yi called the pavilion master of the Ling Xian Sky Pavilion. No one knew if it was his name or a nickname. Arrogant. Wan Shirong sneered. Her delicate face was filled with extreme coldness. Very good. This is the world-defying wild blade I know. Scar of the Dusk enchantment, open. Just then, Tawny's voice rang out like a ghost. As soon as she finished speaking, the Scar of the Dusk, eye between her brows, suddenly erupted with a blood-red chi flow. The scene was strange and unimaginable. Boom! An endless amount of blood-red chi flowed out of the Scar of the Dusk eye, like 1,000 feet of red, or like the afterglow of the setting sun. In the blink of an eye, the chi flow had already spread out for thousands of meters, covering the entire sky. The blood-red enchantment was formed, and all the warriors were wrapped up. The moment the Scar of the Dusk enchantment was formed, everyone felt their chests sink, as if they were in a deep, blood-red sea. The immense pressure that surrounded them made it difficult for them to breathe. What a strong enchantment! Nietan, Yao Fei, Gu Qiulong, and the others' faces darkened at the same time, especially Nietian, whose expression was stiff, because he could feel that the power released by the enchantment had directly sealed off a part of the sky. Moreover, the power of the enchantment was actually the same kind of power as the power of the stars. The Scar of the Dusk, the legendary ninth other pupil, could it be the same kind of power as the power of the stars? Nietian's forehead was covered in cold sweat. The blood-red enchantment power surged out like an ocean, enveloping a part of the sky and restricting everyone's path of retreat. Nietian finally understood that the reason why Wan Shirong dared to boast about killing everyone was because of Tawny's Scar of the Dusk eye. At this moment, there were 3 Spirit Wheel Realm warriors here. Elder Yi, Tang Zhilong, the Outer Court Elder of the Tang family, and Zhang Lang, the Vice Sect Leader of the Battle Cloud Sect. The Outer Court Elder of the Gu family, Gu Zhuai, was already dead, and the people of the Merchant Union had already left the chaotic abyss. The current situation was very critical. No one knew how strong Wan Shirong was, but from the way she easily killed Gu Zhuai, her strength was simply unfathomable. Fortunately, Elder Yi was a Spirit Blade user. Even under the double suppression of the Serene Forest restriction and the Scar of the Dusk enchantment, his strength should not be underestimated. No one can stop me. I want to leave this place. Suddenly, a warrior roared and rushed forward, slamming his palm on the Scar of the Dusk enchantment. The huge palm was extremely powerful, but when it hit the enchantment, it was like a stone falling into the sea, causing only a small ripple before disappearing. Everyone's heart trembled when they saw this scene. The person who attacked was also in the True Element Stage 4, but the enchantment basically ignored his attack. It was too strange. Courting death. A bone-chilling voice sounded, and a red shadow appeared like a ghost, flying over that warrior. Blood appeared, and that warrior didn't understand what was going on. He felt a chill on his neck, and then he desperately covered his neck, but he couldn't stop the blood from gushing out. He died on the spot, and all the blood in his body was swallowed up, becoming nourishment for the Scar of the Dusk enchantment. This strange scene made everyone's heart go cold, and they all looked at Tawny with deep fear. Grand Preceptor Yu, Wang Haoshuan looked at Tawny and didn't know what to say. His tongue was spinning in his mouth, but his brain couldn't keep up. Haoshuan, hide behind me. Yao Feik's voice sounded, and it was obvious that he was forcing himself to calm down, unable to hide his fear. Wang Haoshuan still didn't understand what was going on. Who was Tawny, and how did she get involved with the Deputy City Lord of Chaos City? The hole in his brain was too big, and Wang Haoshuan couldn't wrap his head around it. Chapter 481. What a powerful doppelganger. Feeling the power of the doppelganger behind Tawny, the crowd was shocked. The doppelganger's power was close to that of a warrior in the 5th level of the True Element Realm. Scar the Sunset, kill. Hu Xiaoli let out a delicate cry, and 6 sunset scars shot out like lightning, bringing with them the sharpest and most resolute killing intent. Oh my God, run! The warriors who were attacked screamed in panic. They didn't even have the slightest intention to fight back. They wanted to run, but the Scar of the Sunset was inside the Scar of the Sunset enchantment and was not restricted by the space. Another 6 warriors died, tragically on the spot, with a miserable howl. In the air, the cold smell of blood spread. Everyone felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on their hearts. They couldn't breathe, and their faces were pale. Master, Duamulu came to Nietion's side. He couldn't hide the panic in his voice. Nietion looked back at Duamulu and Guwuyo. He said seriously, no matter what happens, don't separate from each other. Okay. The two nodded. Guwuyo had the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus, so Tawny wouldn't kill her. Duamulu was with her, so he was safe. As for Tang 13, she was temporarily protected by the Tang family's outer house elder. Zhan Xiaoi was protected by the Battle Cloud sect, and Ruoyu and Xinya were standing behind Wan Qirong, so they were safe. That mysterious, faceless man has the legendary Nine-Yang body. He has the ability to protect himself. At this moment, Nietion hoped that Raindrop Xinya wouldn't step forward. At least she would be safe if she followed behind Wan Qirong. Nietion was thinking about how to break the scar of the sunset enchantment. If the enchantment was not broken, everyone would die. Mr. Nye, get ready to leave. Elder Ye's voice suddenly sounded in Nietion's mind. Elder Ye. Nietion was stunned for a moment. In the next moment, he saw Elder Ye's figure suddenly move, and he launched the fiercest attack towards Wan Qirong. Reverse Serene Essence Blade, No Mercy Blade. A furious roar resounded, and boundless saber, Qi, surged out. The wild saber intent instantly reached its peak. The winds and clouds surged, and the sky changed color. With one strike, mountains and rivers collapsed. Terrifying blade images filled the greater half of the spirit formation space. Like a mountain, they pressed down on Wan Qirong. Yi Linyun, you underestimate me. Facing Elder Ye's all-out attack, Wan Qirong's expression did not change. The 6 words of ghost words suddenly expanded, forming 6 shields around her body. Boom! The fiercest collision shook the entire enchantment space, and cracks actually appeared at the edges. Good chance. Boss Nietion, let's go. The first person to react was Gooden. He shouted in surprise, and his figure flashed, and he punched towards the cracks in the enchantment space. At this moment, Nietion sensed an extremely cold, killing intent. He shouted, "Danger!" but was already too late. A purple figure flashed by, and a cold sword directly pierced through Gooden's body. The joy on Gooden's face instantly turned stiff, and the vitality in his eyes suddenly disappeared. He died on the spot. Gooden! Nietion roared, and his eyes locked onto the person who attacked. It was the assassin from Ling Xiantian Pavilion, Wen Hao. Wen Hao was a swordsman, and in the Twilight Scar space, Tawny had given him some kind of power. Killing Gooden was as easy as flipping his hand. If you want to touch the Twilight Scar space, you have to ask my 7-kill sword first. Wen Hao shouted coldly. The tip of the 7-kill sword pointed at Nietion. The corner of his mouth raised into a slanted arc, and said coldly, "Nietion, the next one is you." Tawny's Twilight Scar eyes had already been opened, and Nietion was no longer of any use to her, so Wen Hao could attack without restraint. At this time, a muffled groan sounded out, and Elder Ye's figure was actually sent flying. A smear of blood appeared in the air, and he was actually beaten to the point of vomiting blood. Elder Ye. When Duanmu and the rest saw this scene, they wanted to go forward, but were stopped by Elder Ye's angry roar. "No one comes over." Wan Qirong was too terrifying. Elder Yi, who had taken the initiative to attack, was actually injured in a single move. A cold and ear-piercing voice sounded out. Wan Qirong looked at Elder Yi with an extremely disdainful gaze. The world-defying wild blade back then. Is there only this much strength left? I remember that back then. You weren't even afraid of Tang, Hao, and Mo Zhaojing. If not for the Pavilion Master defeating you, I'm afraid that Sumi Ling would have been turned upside down by you. Pavilion Master defeated Elder Yi? Nietion suddenly remembered that the Lin family's Lin Yifang had once said that 80 years ago, when Elder Yi stepped on his Sumi Ling city, he challenged all the great geniuses and was defeated in the end. Furthermore, it wasn't Tang Hao and Mo Zhaojing who defeated Elder Yi, but someone else. He never thought that the person who defeated Elder Yi back then would actually be the Ling Xian Tian Pavilion's pavilion master. No wonder no one had ever mentioned this person who defeated Elder Yi. It turned out that he was someone who couldn't be mentioned. Defeat me? Elder Yi laughed wildly, as if he had heard a big joke, and said sinisterly, Yukigui, my good brother, if it wasn't for his tricks, how could he have defeated me? Huh? Nye Tian was stunned once again. It seemed that the matter back then wasn't that simple. The reason why Yukigui was able to defeat Elder Yi seemed to be because of a scheme. Wan Shirong didn't mind at all, and said with a cold smile, Yi Lin Yun, a loss is a loss, no matter how you quibble. It's useless. The pavilion master said that to win chess, you don't have to win on the chessboard. You can also win outside of the chessboard. Shameless. Elder Yi roared in anger, and his figure flew out. The one who quibbled is you. Arrogant wild blade, black-yellow reverse slash. The serene yuan reverse blade struck out again. The violent blade intent brought with it extreme anger. Rolling out, the endless blade chi was like tentacles surging out, condensing into a huge blade image in the air. The most extreme blade chi, the most extreme anger under the blade, all of it was released, leaving no room for maneuver. 6 words of ghost words, fusion. Wan Shirong was fearless in the face of danger. The 6 words of ghost words actually merged into one, forming her strongest defense. Boom! An even more violent collision. Everyone felt a surging wave of air rolling out. A wave of air surged out in all directions. The scar of dusk enchantment shook violently, on the verge of collapse, as though it was about to be destroyed. The battle between Wan Shirong and Elder Yi was too terrifying. The scar of dusk enchantment was almost unable to withstand it. Puffed. Tawny spat out a mouthful of blood. The scar of dusk eye between her eyebrows. Blood flowed out. At the same time, Elder Yi was sent flying, dripping with blood in the air. Ha! When Wan Shirong saw that Elder Yi had been defeated, she laughed maniacally. The arrogant wild blade, which had caused all the geniuses in the Shumi spirit capital to tremble in fear, was now completely oppressed by her. This kind of feeling made Wan Shirong feel a kind of abnormal satisfaction in her heart. Yilin Yin, I've played enough. My next move will take your life. Wan Shirong laughed enough. The coldness in her eyes suddenly intensified. The 6 words of ghost words was once again divided, and she coldly said, Lock. Chapter 482. When Wan Shirong uttered the word lock, Nye Tian's heart sank. Just now, Elder Gu Jue of the Gu family was tortured to death by Wan Shirong's ghost language spell. Now that the same spell was used on Elder Yi, would he be able to withstand it? At the same time, Nye Tian had no time to think. Wen Hao's figure appeared in front of him with a sinister smile on his face, like a wolf that had encountered a little lamb. Nye Tian, your friend is dead. Don't you want to take revenge? Wen Hao said with a sinister smile, pointing at the corpse floating in midair. Gooden's corpse had become a mummy, and the blood in his body had been completely absorbed by the scar of dusk boundary. Gooden, the sorrow in Nye Tian's eyes intensified. Back then, Gooden had come to the Chaos Abyss and was saved by someone with the surname Tang. However, he wasn't so lucky this time and eventually died in the Chaos Abyss. Nye Tian felt guilty towards Gooden, which made it even harder for him to control his anger. You're courting death. With a cold voice, Nye Tian's body suddenly surged with violent airflow, and his aura suddenly skyrocketed. The death token is in your hands, so your life is mine. Wen Hao sensed that Nye Tian's aura was strange, but he wasn't afraid. He immediately activated the sword's warp, and the terrifying sword aura of a swordsman spread out, instantly enveloping the space within 100 meters. In the scar of dust boundary, Wen Hao's strength had increased, but Nye Tian's strength was suppressed. Under such circumstances, the difference in strength between the two of them became even more obvious. Kill! Wen Hao spat out a word and stabbed with the 7-kill sword. A sharp and cold sword intent suddenly surged out and shot towards Nye Tian. Nietion didn't dodge. The proud sword wings appeared behind him, and his figure burst out. He didn't dodge or retreat, but instead charged towards Wenhao's attack. Nietion's action made Wenhao slightly stunned. Wasn't he courting death? Who would charge head-on into someone else's attack? They must be tired of living. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. A cold laughter resounded as Wenhao struck out with his sword again. This time, it was a sure-kill move, breaking Kuei 7 murders. 7 sword shadows flew out at lightning speed. The whistling sound in the air was filled with the cold aura of the Grim Reaper. Nietion's eyes were as cold as steel. The wings on his back suddenly shook, and his figure accelerated again. Puff, puff, puff. 7 sword shadows pierced through Nietion's body. He slightly tilted his body to avoid being hit on his chest, but all his arms and shoulders were pierced through, and blood gushed out like a fountain. Is he crazy? Everyone was stunned when they saw Nietion rushing towards Wenhao's attack. This was no different from suicide. However, some martial artists could see that Nietion did not recklessly charge forward, but rather cleverly avoided the vital point of his heart. However, with the 7 sword shadows piercing through his body and the sword chi gushing into his body, how could his body of flesh and blood withstand such an injury? Ice claw. Nietion did not care at all. Even though his arm was in his hand, he still struck out with his palm. Suddenly, the endless power of ice surged, and countless ice flowers bloomed in the air. They were crystal clear, but with cold, killing intent. Wenhao sensed that something was wrong. It seemed that Nietion's strength was not suppressed by the scar of the dust Kekai. Otherwise, how could he burst out such a strong power? The power of ice was also a power that Nietion had never shown before. Why did it suddenly appear? Wenhao couldn't figure out what was going on. Just when he was confused, a giant ice hand appeared in the air, and endless wind and frost rushed over. Crack, crack, crack. A clear sound was heard. The power of ice first froze Wenhao's arm, then exploded along his arm, and directly froze his whole body. How is this possible? The crowd exclaimed again. Nietion, who was at an absolute disadvantage, suddenly turned the situation around and froze Wenhao in an instant, freezing the opponent in the space of swordsman's sword. This power is too strong. Yao Fei looked at the scene in front of him, and his expression was shocked. Nietion's strength was indeed not suppressed by the scar of the dust Kekai. What was suppressed was his 9 Yuan meridians, but the 10th Yuan meridian, the origin star stone, was not suppressed. The Ice Claw was a 3rd-grade star soul on the star soul steel. Its power was terrifying, enough to kill a true element realm martial artist. However, it was still too weak to kill Wenhao. Break! Wenhao let out an enraged roar as he forcibly broke the ice power before Nietion could reach him. However, the coldness of the wind and frost had already frozen everything around him. His speed was affected, and he moved as slowly as if he were walking in a swamp. Wenhao breaking the power of ice didn't surprise Nietion. He had already expected it, and an extreme killing intent appeared on his face. Raging Flame Blade. Nietion struck out with his palm again, and this time, it was a different kind of raging flame. 2 balls of fire, like ferocious tigers descending the mountain, condensed into a flaming sword and surged out. In an instant, the 2 flaming swords unexpectedly had some kind of strange fusion with the power of ice, and turned into 2 swords of ice and fire, attacking Wenhao. The sudden scene caused the crowd to be stunned, and their pupils constricted. The power of ice and the power of raging flames, 2 completely different kinds of power. How could they appear in Nietion's body at the same time? What was the attribute of his Yuan spirit? Ice and fire were originally 2 extreme existences, one extremely cold, the other extremely hot. However, in the hands of Nietion, these 2 kinds of power could be used freely and could even fuse at the critical moment. It was really too strange. The Claws of Ice and the Raging Flame Blade were both 3rd-rank star souls. Although they manifested the power of ice and raging flames, their essence was still astral energy. Therefore, it wasn't strange for them to be able to fuse together. You? The two swords of ice and fire in his eyes expanded, and at this moment, when Hao felt the most realistic killing intent. He wanted to say something, but he was already unable to speak. Pooh! Pooh! The swords of ice and fire flew past, piercing through his chest. Fresh blood splattered in the air. In Wen Hao's eyes, a complicated look could be seen. There was surprise, doubt, disappointment, but there was no hint of fear. As a killing tool, what he cultivated was the seven slaughter sword art. Nie Tian had long said that the seven slaughter sword art could kill others, but also kill oneself. Almost every strike of the sword would cause harm to the user. Since Wen Hao cultivated the seven slaughter sword art, he originally didn't want to live. However, he never imagined that he would actually die in the hands of Nie Tian and die in such a painful way. The power of ice and raging flames alternated on Wen Hao's body. The coldness of ice, the heat of fire. These two extreme feelings intertwined to form the most terrifying killing intent. I am the Grim Reaper. At the final moment of his life, Wen Hao wanted to say his last words, but he would never have the chance to do so. Nie Tian's face was emotionless, as if he was the Grim Reaper. His long sword sliced through the air, and with a flash of blood, a bloody head flew into the air. His expression was one of unwillingness, as he died with hatred. Chapter 483. In order to kill Wen Hao, Nie Tian had to use 2 third-rank star souls and was heavily injured. His body was pierced through in 7 places by Wen Hao's 7 slaughter destruction. If he didn't rush forward to face the attack head-on, Nie Tian wouldn't even be able to get close to Wen Hao in the sword warp and latitude space. This battle was a bitter victory. The reason why Nie Tian chose to fight with his life on the line was because he knew that as long as his heart wasn't injured, the 9-star dragon vein in his body would allow him to recover in a short period of time. The 9-star dragon vein allowed Nie Tian's body to be comparable to a divine dragon's. As long as his vital points weren't injured, he wouldn't die. When the crowd saw Wen Hao's corpse falling to the ground, they were all dumbfounded. Nie Tian's strength was too strange. Furthermore, his method of fighting with his life on the line was even more terrifying. Nie Tian's City Lord's talent is too terrifying. It's hard to estimate. Yao Fei's eyes narrowed. The shock in his heart was written all over his face. He truly didn't expect that this youth, who didn't attract much attention when he first met him in the great Chuxian residence, was actually so terrifying. With Wen Hao's strength, even Yao Fei would have to expend some effort to kill him in the Destiny Forest. Nie Tian's strength was far below Wen Hao's, but he was able to kill him in a single strike. It wasn't only because of his terrifying strength, but also because of his desperate methods. If Nie Tian didn't fight with his life on the line, the outcome of the battle would be hard to predict. After killing Wen Hao, Nie Tian retreated to the side. The wounds on his body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The battle between Nie Tian and Wen Hao only happened in an instant. However, the battle between Wan Shirong and Elder Yi had just started. Slash! Wan Shirong used the sealing and defying words to restrict Elder Yi's movements. In the next instant, she used the slash word filled with killing intent. Swish! The slash word appeared in midair. A sharp blade appeared and attacked Elder Yi. Elder Yi's body was trapped by the ghost sealing spell. At the most dangerous moment, he suddenly closed his eyes. When everyone saw this scene, they thought that Elder Yi was going to stretch out his neck and wait to be killed. They were all shocked. 10,000 feet tyrannical force. Elder Yi suddenly let out a roar just as the ultimate killing move was about to hit him. His body immediately released a violent and domineering force, and he directly broke free from the ghost sealing word that was entangled around his body. Bang! The instant he broke free, Elder Yi slashed down with his saber towards Ghost Slayer. Boom! Extreme attacks collided, causing light to scatter in all directions. Space itself was torn apart, and billowing waves of chi spread out in all directions. Everyone felt their hearts tremble, and many people actually vomited blood. Wan Shirong was at the 6th tier of the Divine Wheel, while Elder Yi was at the third tier of the divine wheel. Both of them were suppressed by the restriction, but one of them possessed the strange six-word ghost language technique, while the other was a spirit saber user. The level of their battle was no less than a battle between divine will practitioners. The Scar of the Dusk boundary was attacked again. Although it was on the verge of collapse, it was not destroyed. Tawny's Scar of the Dusk boundary was bleeding. She was guarded by two female disciples, preventing others from getting close to her. Bang! In a head-on collision, Elder Yi was at an absolute disadvantage. His entire body was already dripping with blood, and one could even see the white bones on his body. Huh! Wanshirong laughed maniacally. World-defying wild saber, I want to see how much more blood you can shed. Elder Yi did not say anything. He stared at his opponent with his bloodshot eyes. Nie Tian could tell that Elder Yi was on the verge of defeat. If he continued to fight, he would definitely die. Elder Yi had the demon's sealing curse, the restriction of the Destiny Forest, and the suppression of the Scar of the Dusk boundary. He had 3 layers of suppression behind him, yet he was still able to fight against an opponent who was far stronger than him to this extent. His strength was unimaginable. It was not surprising for such a person to be able to challenge the geniuses of the Su-Mi spirit capital. Nie Tian estimated that if the pavilion master of the Ling Xiansky Pavilion did not play any tricks, he would definitely not be a match for Elder Yi. At this moment, Tang Jiulong and Battle Wolf looked at each other and nodded. 2 figures immediately rushed out. Tang Jiulong and Battle Wolf were Spirit Wheel Realm warriors from the Tang family and the Battle Cloud sect. They could already tell that they had to kill Wanshirong. Otherwise, everyone present would die. Another 2 ants? All right, then I will let you die together. Wanshirong did not put the 2 of them in her eyes at all. In her eyes, there was only one person who could be called an opponent, and that was Wild Saber Yi Linyan. Arrogant. Tang Jiulong and Battle Wolf roared at the same time. They did not wait any longer and immediately attacked. Wanshirong directly treated Spirit Wheel Realm warriors as ants. She was indeed arrogant. A black spear appeared in Tang Jiulong's hand. With a thrust of the spear, surging yuan qi gushed out, and a powerful and overbearing aura filled the air. A huge shadow of a spearhead suddenly appeared, pierced through the air and blasted towards Wanshirong. Battle Wolf also made his move at this moment. A 2-headed giant wolf appeared behind him and whizzed out. A bloody and violent aura came crashing down. You only have this little strength, and you still dare to come and make a fool of yourself. You are courting death. Wanshirong's evil voice did not contain the slightest bit of hesitation. The ghost words forbidden and devour shot out a strange black light at the same time. Boom! Boom! 2 explosions sounded in the air at the same time. 2 figures were sent flying. Blood splattered, and the air was filled with the smell of blood. One of Tang Jiulong's arms was chopped off, and the 2-headed giant wolf behind Battle Wolf only had 1 head left. One move. Just 1 move was enough to seriously injure 2 Spirit Wheel Realm warriors. Wanshirong's strength was so terrifying that it made one's hair stand on end. At this moment, Tang Jiulong and Battle Wolf finally understood how difficult it was for Elder Yi to fight with this woman to this extent. Die! Tawny's voice suddenly sounded. 2 rays of light from the sunset scar appeared out of thin air like ghosts. Before Tang Jiulong and Battle Wolf could react, they were beheaded. It was the most primitive and effective method of killing. Blood splattered and blood surged. The blood and yuan qi of the Spirit Wheel Realm warriors were completely absorbed by the sunset scar in the air. Uncle Jiu. Tang 13 saw that Tang Jiulong was killed and wailed loudly. Uncle Wolf. Zhang Xiaoi was also grieving over Battle Wolf's death and wailed in pain. The 2 figures flew out at almost the same time and attacked Tawny. Courting death. A cold voice was heard, like the judgment of the Grim Reaper. 2 figures leaped out from behind Tawny. They were her 2 disciples. Oh no! Nie Tian's heart sank. He leaped into the air and attacked immediately. The yuan meridians in his body revolved crazily. Endless power of the stars surged out, and he slashed down with his sword ferociously. The two disciples of Tawny charged towards Tang 13 and Zhan Xiaoyi at an extremely fast speed. However, Nie Tian's speed was even faster. He was not affected by the sunset scar in the slightest. Even though he moved later, he arrived first and slashed down with his sword. Boom! A terrifying sword aura surged out like a door of restriction, preventing the two disciples of Tawny from attacking. Ghost Blade, Demon Kill. Overlord Emperor Kill. Chapter 484. As the two of them finished speaking, swoosh! A strange white light flashed, followed by a shrill scream. Boom! At the same time, the domineering battle cloud spear appeared, followed by another scream. Two silhouettes were sent flying, dead on the spot. Nie Tian, Tang 13, and Zhan Xiaoyi. The three of them attacked separately, but they had reached an amazing level of coordination. Tawny's two disciples died on the spot. Yu Yao. Tawny screamed when she saw the people around her die. The eye of the scar of dusk flickered strangely, and a red light shot out towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian felt the raw star stone in his body vibrate mysteriously, as if it had a reaction. He moved slightly to the side, avoiding the fatal attack. Tang 13 and Zhan Xiaoyi calmed down and looked at Nie Tian with a strange and shocked expression. Just now, they saw Nie Tian being stabbed multiple times, and his life was in danger. But in just a moment, he miraculously recovered. This made them wonder if Nie Tian still had a body of flesh and blood. Zhan Xiaoyi thought that even his battle cloud overlord body did not have such a terrifying recovery ability. The current Nie Tian could not be said to have a body of flesh and blood. After merging with the 9-star dragon veins, his physique was between the body of a divine dragon and a normal martial body. It was equivalent to a very strong spiritual body. It should not be as strong as the faceless man's 9-sun body, but it was at least on par with Zhan Xiaoyi's battle cloud overlord body. Nie Tian's expression suddenly changed, and he was shocked. The power of the Eye of the Scar of Dusk is indeed the same as the power of the stars. The red light just now confirmed to Nie Tian that the power of the Eye of the Scar of Dusk was of the same attribute as the power of the stars. No wonder Tawny wanted to use his power to activate the Eye of the Scar of Dusk. In the past, people in the Heaven Realm could not activate the Eye of the Scar of Dusk because no one in the Heaven Realm had the power of the stars. Is the Eye of Dusk scar related to the raw star stone? Nie Tian looked at Tawny, his eyes burning with passion. At this moment, the Scar of Dusk boundary had become more stable after absorbing the blood chi and blood chi of Tang Julong and Zhan Lang, the two spirit wheel realm warriors. Retreat! Nie Tian shouted angrily. He signaled for Tang 13 and Zhan Xiaoyi to retreat. You want to leave? Dream on. Tawny's beautiful eyes flashed with a sharp light. You killed her disciple, and you still want to live? No way. As soon as the icy cold and resolute voice resounded out, numerous red lights surged out, and they bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they assaulted Nie Tian's group of three. Danger! Nie Tian's heart suddenly trembled. He couldn't understand why Tawny's Scar of Dusk, which had just been activated, possessed such terrifying power. Crimson Moon Wheel. Tang 13 sensed the danger and opened her ghost eye again. The terrifying power of her eyes condensed into a crimson moon in front of her chest. Overlord carries the cauldron. Zhan Xiaoyi also displayed the Battle Cloud Tyrant Body's martial technique. A golden figure appeared and enveloped his body. The red light of Nirvana appeared, and everything in front of them was covered in blood. A giant blood-red whirlpool appeared in the air. It was abnormally terrifying, bloody, and violent, and carried with it a strong scent of death. Two cries of agony sounded almost at the same time. Tang 13 and Zhan Xiaoyi were pulled by the blood-red whirlpool and flew uncontrollably towards the center of the whirlpool. Oh no! Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. If the two of them were sucked into the whirlpool, they would definitely die. Purple, flaming devil dragon. At this critical moment, Nie Tian used his star soul again. He slammed his palm down, and an endless amount of purple yuan qi surged out. A devil dragon that was covered in purple flames appeared. Roar! The devil dragon roared and crashed into the blood-red whirlpool without hesitation. The viscous blood-red energy was dispersed by the devil dragon, and the huge body of the dragon rushed into the whirlpool. With a flick of its tail, it slapped Tang 13 and Zhang Xiaoyi away. The two of them stabilized themselves in the air. Their faces were drenched in cold sweat. They had just barely escaped with their lives. You can't even protect yourself, and you still want to save others? You're courting death. Tawny shouted. The Nirvana whirlpool swallowed Nietian's purple, flaming devil dragon. She could actually feel the scar of dusk becoming stronger and stronger. That surge of power made her feel that it was enough to destroy everything. Oh no! Nietian immediately felt that something was wrong. The scar of dusk and the astral energy were the same type of energy. Just now, the blood-red whirlpool had swallowed a third-rank star soul. The power of the scar of dusk had definitely increased. Die! Tawny's beautiful eyes shone with a sharp, killing intent. She shouted, and her silver hair fluttered in the wind. She looked like a peerless killing god. The Nirvana whirlpool approached Nietian. Although it was about 100 meters away, Nietian felt that the devouring power of the whirlpool could destroy everything. This whirlpool is so strong. Nietian felt as if he had fallen into a swamp. The more he struggled, the faster he fell. In the blink of an eye, he was less than 10 meters away from the center of the whirlpool. Boom! Just as he was about to fall into the whirlpool, the ninth extreme chaos beast appeared behind him. The huge red beast roared to the sky, shaking the heavens and earth. Giant spirit, true body? Tawny laughed cold. She was full of disdain. You want to fight against my scar of dusk with this kind of power? You are far from it. Boom! The ninth extreme chaos beast's huge body suddenly stopped in the air. Blazing flames suddenly spewed out of its mouth. It was the doomsday flame that had merged previously. The space suddenly became blazing hot, and the space within a radius of several thousand meters directly turned into a large furnace. The doomsday flame's 10,000-year-old earthly, fiendish aura spread out and enveloped the Nirvana whirlpool. The hot and bloody aura seeped in slowly. However, the Nirvana whirlpool was like a black hole, absorbing and devouring everything. Nietian was in midair. Holding onto the ninth extreme chaos beast, he finally had a chance to catch his breath. What a terrifying whirlpool. I must break through it. Nietian roared. All the essence force in his body surged. Without hesitation, he began to absorb the heaven and earth spiritual power in the boundary. At this moment, even a Tier 3 star soul was far from being able to fight against the Nirvana whirlpool. Give up. You can't fight against my scar of dusk. Tawny's sinister voice was heard. It was full of disdain. Is that so? Nietianling laughed. The corners of his mouth curled up sinisterly. He roared, 12 heavens slaying sword formation, open. As his voice landed, 1,200-meter humongous sword shadows suddenly appeared within a few hundred meters. The powerful aura shook the heavens and the earth, surrounding the Nirvana whirlpool in the center. Once again, Nietian used one of the 3 major sword formations of the Proud Sword art, the 12 heaven slaying sword formation. 12 sword shadows traversed the heavens and earth. Sword intent surged, sword chi overflowed, and the aura shook the heavens. Sword formation? Tawny's eyes narrowed. It was obvious that she was shocked. However, she laughed softly the next moment. You're just a 4th-stage giant spirit. Your sword formation can't break the Nirvana whirlpool. The 12 heaven slaying sword formation was an existence comparable to a Tier 9 spirit formation. If it really unleashed its power, not to mention the Nirvana whirlpool, even the scar of dust boundary would be broken in the blink of an eye. The 12 heaven slaying sword formation was extremely powerful. Every sword shadow was tens of thousands of feet long. It was truly shocking and could make ghosts and gods weep. It was a pity that Nietian's current strength was too weak. He could only unleash 1/10,000th of the sword formation's power. The sword formation is just to gather the heaven and earth spiritual power for me. Nie Tianling laughed. Suddenly, countless sword qi exploded from his body. It directly pierced through his body. Instantly, his body was like a sieve as blood spurted out. Chapter 485. Nie Tian pierced his body with sword qi, ignited his blood qi, and stimulated his sword intent to use the forbidden move of the proud sword art. Previously, when he was fighting against Wu Meng of the martial art hall, he almost used this forbidden move at the last moment. However, he gave up when Elder Yi arrived. Even when Nie Tian was at his peak, he didn't dare to use the forbidden move casually. It was because the power of the forbidden move was too strong, and after using it, he would have to suffer from the backlash. On one hand, he was forced to use the forbidden move. If he didn't use it, he might die under the Nirvana whirlpool. On the other hand, he was confident in a 9-star dragon vein physique. Even if the forbidden move caused a backlash, the 9-star dragon vein physique would be able to recover. Another desperate move. Do you think I'm on how? Tawny saw Nie Tian burning his blood qi, but her eyes were filled with endless contempt. She said, "You can't imagine the power of the eye of the Scar of the Dusk." Nie Tian sneered and said, "The power of the forbidden move is also beyond your imagination." The power of the forbidden move was immeasurable. Even if Nie Tian couldn't use a fraction of the power of the blood-weeping soul slash, he still believed that after this move, the Nirvana whirlpool would disappear. Nie Tian's heart trembled. He chanted in his heart, "Use my blood qi to stimulate my sword intent, prove my sword Dao, and be unyielding. Proud sword art, forbidden move. Heaven extinguishing 3 swords. First form, blood-weeping soul slash." The surging sword qi overflowed in all directions, and the terrifying sword was shrouded the surroundings. In the midst of the soaring blood qi, the surrounding space was filled with an endless bloody and murderous aura. The murderous aura shrouded the entire space, filled with endless sharp killing intent. So terrifying, the crowd exclaimed. They couldn't imagine that under the Scar of the Dusk barrier, Nie Tian could actually burst out such terrifying power. His talent wasn't just ordinary terrifying. "I like to see how strong you are." Nie Tian's aura surged like a tide, causing Hu Shaoli to feel a trace of uneasiness in her heart. She let out an angry roar, and in spite of the limits of the Scar of Dusk, she increased the power of her eyes once again, causing the Nirvana vortex to become even more terrifying. It was like a primordial beast had opened its bloody mouth, wanting to devour everything in its surroundings. Roar! The 9 Extremes Chaos Beast let out a deafening roar that shook the heavens and the earth. It pierced through the clouds and cracked rocks. However, there was a tinge of sorrow in its roar. It was obvious that it could not hold on any longer. "Little 9, let's go back." Nie Tian was already prepared. The 9 Extreme Chaos Beast had bought him some time, and it was enough. There was no point in continuing. Victory or defeat, life or death, will be decided by the next sword. His blood qi was tumbling incessantly. Sword qi surged and overflowed in all directions. His sword intent soared to the heavens and the earth. His killing intent was sharp and resolute. The next taboo move, Weeping Blood Soul Beheading, would determine Nie Tian's life and death. If he could not break the vortex of nirvanic extermination, he would die without a doubt. Not only would he die, but once Tawny's Eye of Dusk absorbed the power of the stars in his body, it would undoubtedly become even more terrifying. Then, the others would have no chance of survival. The next sword would determine the life and death of Nie Tian and everyone else. Proud sword art, Weeping Blood Soul Beheading. A deep roar reverberated in all directions. His blood qi and sword intent reached their peak at this moment. Within the space of hundreds of meters, the 1,200-meter-long sword shadows of the heaven-slaying sword formation suddenly moved and merged into one. In midair, a 100-meter-long blood-colored sword shadow appeared. The majestic aura was like a thunderstorm, and it was daunting. The nirvanic extermination vortex also became violent at this moment. The blood-red black hole released endless terror. as if it could devour and annihilate everything. Break! An angry roar sounded. The weeping blood soul beheading sword fell, and a vast aura descended. It was the same power of the stars. The most extreme collision resulted in the most terrifying sparks. Boom! The deafening sound was like a mountain falling directly on the vast sea. The sudden surging aura changed the color of heaven and earth, and the ghosts and gods were angry. The crowd couldn't stop retreating at this moment. Even the bloody battle between Wan Shurong and Elder Yi was affected. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. A strange sound suddenly sounded in the air, as if a hot iron was put into boiling water. The nirvanic extermination vortex was cut in half from the middle. The crack became bigger and bigger, and finally reached the point where it could not be healed. Boom! The next moment, the nirvanic extermination vortex was completely split in half, and immediately turned into endless blood-colored airflow, dissipating in the boundary. Nietion's titan body was released, and he finally breathed a sigh of relief. The forbidden move of the proud sword art finally broke the nirvanic extermination vortex. Puff! The aura of Nietion's whole body suddenly converged, and his body suddenly shook. A powerful force burst out his body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Weeping blood soul beheading, first weeping blood, then cutting soul, first injuring oneself, then injuring others. After using the forbidden move, Nietion immediately suffered a backlash. Suddenly, the blood in his body was surging, and he couldn't suppress it. The blood gathered in his chest and condensed into a blood knot. He couldn't swallow it or spit it out, which made his breathing become rapid. Feeling the change, Nietion's heart trembled, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Shouldn't the 9-star dragon bloodline physique be able to resist the backlash of the weeping blood soul beheading? Why did it put him in danger instead? At this moment, Nietion could clearly feel that there seemed to be 9 giant dragons roaring and galloping in his body, as if they were going to tear his body apart. The blood knot in his chest was getting bigger and thicker. Nietion had difficulty breathing, and his face was red, as if he was going to explode at any time. Nietion, teacher, Tang 13 and Duanmu Lu could feel that something was wrong with Nietion's situation, and they exclaimed at the same time. Nietion pointed to his chest, but he couldn't say a word. Duanmu Lu, use your 8 extreme sword seal and pierce through Nietion's chest. At this critical moment, a voice rang in Duanmu Lu's mind. It was clearly coming from Nietion's body, but it wasn't Nietion's voice. It was extremely strange. The voice that suddenly shouted wasn't from Nietion, but from Corpse Demon Monarch. Nietion nodded his head frantically, indicating for Duanmu Lu to do as Corpse Demon Monarch said. Duanmu Lu hesitated for a moment, and finally raised his 8 extreme Kunwu. The heavy sword was in the air, and a majestic aura covered the sky. A white sword seal whizzed out, and with a piu sound, it directly pierced through Nietion's chest. At the blood knot, blood gushed out like a fountain and then spread out. Nietion could finally breathe, and his elemental force started to circulate, forcing the blood not out of his body, and his complexion became much better. The 9 dragon veins surged in his body. In the blink of an eye, the bloody hole in Nietion's chest gradually healed. Corpse Demon Monarch, what happened just now? Nietion had a lingering fear, and his expression was unsettled. Master, it should be the first time the 9-star dragon vein adapted to the power of the forbidden move and mistook it for the power in your body, so it didn't stop it, and instead strengthened it. But after the 9-star dragon vein realized its mistake and wanted to fix it, but it was too late. Corpse Demon Monarch explained and said, I believe it won't be like this next time. Chapter 486. The 9-star dragon vein not only gave Nietion a heaven-defying recovery ability, but it could also improve his martial body and increase his strength. This time, he was lucky that he had Duanmu Lu's Ba Ji sword seal. Not only did the sword seal pierce through Nietion's chest, but it also shattered the blood knot on his chest. Otherwise, Nietion would have failed miserably. However, Nietion was burning his own chi and blood, coupled with the backlash from the weeping blood soul slash. Even with the 9-star dragon vein, he would need a few days to fully recover. On the other side, Tawny looked terrible. Blood seeped out of her scar of dusk and dripped down from both sides of her nose. It made her already evil face look even more evil. Her face was shaking, her eyes were shaking, and her entire body was shaking. She never thought that the quietus vortex would be broken by Nietion. She could tell that Nietion was at the end of his rope. If she did not make a move now, when would she? Extreme weak water kill. With a fierce roar, Hushali didn't wait any longer and directly attacked. Like a gust of wind and lightning, a sharp blade suddenly shot towards Nietion. "Don't hurt him!" At that critical moment, a familiar voice was heard. Rui Chinyu suddenly appeared and activated her 9-color pupils again. Blue pupil freeze. The 9-color pupils shone with blue light. An endless amount of pupil power surged out and froze the entire space. Nietion had time to react and easily dodged Tawny's killer move. Tawny's beautiful eyes narrowed and flashed with a strange light. "Who is he to you? Why did you save him?" She had always thought that Rui Chinyu was Wan Qirong's subordinate. Why would she help an outsider at the most critical moment? "He is not to me, but I won't let you hurt him." Rui Chinyu's expression was cold but firm. "Rain, come back." Wan Qirong's voice resounded with uncontrollable rage. She clamored, "I'm well aware of what kind of person you are. How many people will hunt you down if your identity is exposed? Besides, you can only avenge yourself with the power of Chaos City. Otherwise, don't even think about avenging yourself in this lifetime." "I don't care," Rui Chinyu replied coldly. The calmness in her voice made it impossible to guess what she was thinking. At this moment, another figure suddenly appeared. It was the faceless man. "Ruiyu's family will avenge itself. There's no need for anyone else to interfere." Faceless man looked at Wan Qirong coldly. His eyes, Wan Qirong, were cold and determined. Wan Qirong's beautiful eyes flickered. Only then did she notice the faceless man's existence. She roared coldly, "Who are you?" Previously, Wan Qirong had seen the faceless man transferring his blood to Rui Chinyu. She had already suspected his identity at that time, but she couldn't be sure. The faceless man had been keeping a low profile. Even in the scar of dust magic barrier, he didn't make sound. Until Rui Chinyu stood out, he stood out too. To be able to transfer his blood to Rui Chinyu, the faceless man's identity was obvious. He was also from Ruiyu's family. Ruiyu's family was the Bloody Slaughter Palace in the past, but the Bloody Slaughter Palace had been destroyed by a mysterious force that suddenly came to the land of Bloody Massacre 20 years ago. Why was this faceless man still alive? The Bloody Slaughter Palace had offended many forces. As long as Wan Qirong revealed Rui Chinyu's identity, there would naturally be a large number of enemies coming for them. Unfortunately, Rui Chinyu wasn't afraid of her threat at all, and the faceless man was even more disdainful. He said coldly, "You don't have the right to know who I am. Brat, you're courting death." Wan Qirong was infuriated. With a shout, the ghost word of Locke shot out a ray of light that wrapped around the faceless man like a big snake. "You haven't mastered the ghost word of 6 words yet. If Yugue used it, I would still be afraid, but you can't trap me." The faceless man smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with disdain. His whole body released rays of golden light. His whole body was like a golden sun, shining in all directions. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. Wan Qirong's ghost word of Locke was directly broken by him. This, what a powerful martial body. Is his body still made of flesh and blood? This scene made everyone's heart tremble, and they exclaimed. The crowd clearly saw that the faceless man completely relied on the power of his martial body to break free from the ghost word of Locke. The strength of his body was unimaginable. One must know that even Tang Jilong, Battle Wolf, and other spirit wheel realm warriors couldn't break free from Wan Qirong's ghost word of Locke. The nine-yang body is really domineering. Nietion was slightly moved, and he was even more surprised in his heart. The restriction of the heavens mandate force suppressed everyone's strength to around the 5th tier of true element. The faceless man's strength was at the 9th tier of true element, and Wan Shirong's strength was at the 6th tier of spirit wheel. Under the restriction, their strength was pulled to the same level. Wan Shirong was able to kill Tang Zhilong and the others instantly because these people didn't know anything about the ghost word of 6 words. However, the faceless man seemed to be very familiar with the ghost word of 6 words. Moreover, his Nanyang body had a strong restraining effect on the ghost word of 6 words. Moreover, he wasn't suppressed by the power of the restriction, which allowed him to easily break free from the ghost word of 6 words. More importantly, the faceless man mentioned a name, the pavilion master of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, Yu Gui. It seemed that the faceless man also knew this pavilion master, and from his reaction, he didn't seem to care much about Yu Gui. The Nanyang body, in his early 20s, with the strength of the 9th tier of true element, the bloodline of the Yu clan, and knowing the pavilion master of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, the faceless man seemed to be hiding endless secrets. Elder Yi, are you okay? Nie Tian flashed to the side of Elder Yi, who was already on the verge of collapse. His whole body was dripping with blood, and under his tattered clothes, there wasn't a single intact skin on his body. In the battle with Wan Shirong, Elder Yi had almost exhausted all his origin energy. It was really not easy for him to be able to hold on until now. It's just a small injury, not worth mentioning. Elder Yi laughed loudly and said arrogantly, "If it weren't for this damn death chain, I, Yi Linyun, wouldn't be afraid of anyone." Nie Tian nodded slightly with a solemn expression. With Yi Linyun's mentality, even if he was under the god's sealing curse, he still wouldn't be afraid of any opponent. This was the mentality of an expert. Martial artists were heaven-defying. If one didn't have the mentality of an expert, how could one become an expert? Nie Tian fed a few spirit pills to Elder Yi, and the latter's expression softened a little. "Who are you?" Wan Shirong saw that the faceless man easily broke through her ghost language art, and her face stiffened for a moment. She forced herself to calm down and asked coldly, "You actually took the initiative to expose your identity." The faceless man smiled faintly, his eyes full of mockery, and said, "I really don't understand. Yu Gui is also a character. How could he have such a stupid subordinate like you?" Being called a fool in front of her, Wan Shirong was furious. To think that she was the vice city lord of Chaos City, the vice pavilion master of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Even the pavilion master himself hadn't reprimanded her to her face, and now she was being reprimanded by a faceless brat who came out of nowhere. How could she tolerate it? Actually, Wan Shirong wasn't considered stupid. She was just too confident, so she took the initiative to expose her identity. She thought that with her and tawny strength, killing these people in front of them would be a piece of cake. Chapter 487. Wan Shirong looked at the faceless man. His mysterious gaze made her feel a trace of fear. Not only did the faceless man know about Nether Ghost, but he was also very familiar with the 6-word ghost language spell. Who exactly was he? The 6-word ghost language spell was taught to Wan Shirong by Nether Ghost. The latter did not know where this evil spell came from. So how did the faceless man know about it? "Brat, let me ask you again. Who are you?" Wan Shirong's eyes flickered as she asked coldly again. "I've said it before. You don't have the right to know who I am." The faceless man gave the same answer, showing his deep disdain. "You're courting death." Wan Shirong could no longer control the anger in her heart. With a roar, the reverse and / ghost language spells attacked at the same time. 2 rays of light appeared and turned into 2 giant black snakes in the air. They opened their mouths and attacked the faceless man. Black ghost language snake? Slightly stunned, the faceless man's eyes were filled with extreme disdain. He said softly, "3 suns split the heavens." As soon as he said that, 3 golden suns appeared. They were like the rising sun, dazzling and incomparable. Under the endless brilliance of the golden suns, the reverse and / ghost language spell shattered. Wan Shirong's body trembled, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. It was the first time she fought with the faceless man, and she was injured. This was the first time Wan Qirong was injured. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness. Nye Tian shook his head slightly and murmured, "The faceless man knows the weakness of the six-word ghost language spell. The Nine-Yang Constitution is too effective against this kind of evil spell. If it weren't for the Destiny Force restriction, Wan Qirong would have a higher chance of winning. But now, she's most likely going to lose." "Yes." Yao Fei frowned and nodded. The six-word ghost language spell was completely restrained by the Nine-Yang power. Wan Qirong was indeed at a disadvantage. On the other side, Tawny and Rui Qinyu were facing each other. Both of them were born with different pupils, one with the scar of the sunset eye and the other with the rainbow eye. However, Tawny's scar of dusk eye was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and even the scar of dust barrier was on the verge of collapse. "Your eyes?" Tawny sensed a hint of threat from the other party's red and blue pupils and asked in horror. "You're not the only one with an innate special pupil." Rui Qinyu was arrogant and cold. Her cold gaze gave people a sense of oppression. "It really is the other pupil." Tawny's eyes narrowed as her heart skipped a beat. How could she have imagined that she would meet another person with strange eyes? Tawny, kill her. Wan Qirong was forced to retreat by the faceless man. She could not hold on any longer and shouted anxiously. "All right." Tawny made up her mind and shouted in a shrill voice. "Then let's see if your other pupil or mine is more powerful." Although Rui Qinyu also had the other pupil, Tawny could tell that she was only in the second level of true element, which was not enough to unleash the full power of the other pupil. On the other hand, Hu Shaoli was at the 9th level of true element. Moreover, the scar of dusk enchantment had perfectly offset the power of the restriction. She was confident that even if she didn't use the scar of dusk eye, she could still kill Raindrop Thousand Leaves. Extreme slash of Rui water. With a roar, a ball of murky liquid appeared behind Tawny and instantly turned into a sharp blade, striking at Rui Qinyu. Whoosh! The incredible speed and the power to cut through the air suddenly arrived. Scarlet Eye, Burning Sky. Rui Qinyu did not retreat. The power of the scarlet eye of the 9-color pupil was activated, and the scarlet pupil power spread out 100 meters, forming a shocking pillar of fire that drowned Tawny's attack. Tawny was caught off guard and quickly retreated. 3,000 Rui Qinyu formed a Rui water shield around her to resist the attack of the Burning Sky fire pillar. Puff! She flew backward and spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. It took her 100 meters to stabilize her body. Rui Qinyu did not fare well either. Her eyes were overflowing with blood, and the red and blue light in her eyes had dimmed a lot. Crack! 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 At this time, Hu Shaoli could no longer support the dusk scar barrier, and cracks began to appear on the spherical barrier that was several thousand meters in radius. The enchantment is going to crack. Everyone saw this scene, very excited, screamed. Wan Qirong saw that the barrier was about to crack, and the fear in her eyes deepened. She flashed and came to Tawny's side. The faceless man did not chase after her. The battle between the two was not a battle of life and death, and both sides had their own concerns. Besides, the faceless man knew that if he forced Wan Qirong too much, she might detonate the 6-word ghost words, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Lady, Tawny felt Wan Qirong's anger and was a little afraid. Leave first. Wan Qirong's cold voice sounded, and she looked at the spirit ginseng in the sky. Even if the people of the Chaos Abyss did not die now, they would not be able to leave Chaos City alive when they came out. And the spirit ginseng was what Wan Qirong was determined to get. She wants the spirit ginseng. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed, and there was an unconcealable desire in them. The spirit ginseng was a rare flower, and it could not fall into the hands of Wan Qirong and the others. The others also looked at the destiny spirit ginseng. The spirit ginseng was the culprit that caused this battle. Now that the battle had come to an end, everyone's attention was on the spirit ginseng. Nye Tian looked around. It was not only Wan Qirong, Tawny, Yao Feek, but also the surviving powerhouses of the Battle Cloud sect. They were also eyeing the spirit ginseng. Tawny, hold them back. Wan Qirong shouted. She flew up and came out of a crack in the scar of dust barrier and dashed toward the spirit ginseng. F***CK. We can't let her snatch that flower. That's mine. The crowd was going crazy. They knew that Wan Qirong was injured, and they all dashed toward her. Elder Yi, leave his place first. I will look for you after I get the flower. Nie Tian said. The proud sword wings appeared behind him, and, with a flap of the wings, he shot out like a ray of light. Let's go first. Elder Yi and Duanmulu left in another direction. More than a dozen martial artists were basically above the 5th level of the true element realm. Only Nie Tian was at the 4th level of the giant spirit realm, but he was faster than the others, and arrived at the edge of the barrier in the blink of an eye. Tawny could no longer maintain the scar of dusk barrier. With a loud bang, the barrier, which was thousands of meters long, collapsed. Blood-red airflow surged in the air, like the setting sun falling on the earth. Although the smell of blood was strong, there was a kind of beautiful visual beauty. Puff! The scar of dusk barrier exploded, and Tawny spat out a mouthful of blood, but her expression was much better. She closed the scar of dusk eye and looked into the distance. She did not pay attention to the spirit ginseng, but to the direction where Gu Wuyo and the others left. In the eyes of others, it was the spirit ginseng, but to Tawny, Gu Wuyo's scarlet soul red lotus was more important. Moreover, she also knew that even if she snatched the spirit ginseng, she would have to give it to Wan Qirong in the end, so it was better to snatch something that belonged to her. Chapter 488. More than a dozen figures rushed towards the Destiny Spirit Ginseng at the same time. Everyone wanted to possess this kind of rare flower. Wan Qirong's figure flashed and arrived within the range of the Destiny Spirit Ginseng's radiance. The Destiny Spirit Ginseng was radiant and colorful divine light flowed within a few hundred meters. Its petals bloomed layer by layer, constantly changing colors. It was so beautiful that it made people's hearts stop beating. The spirit ginseng's body was not big, only the size of an adult's fist. It was pure white and dazzling. There was a hole in the middle which was very strange, but the radiance it emitted spread out for hundreds of meters. Break! Wan Qirong entered the Destiny Spirit Ginseng's radiance and felt a strong spiritual array's aura. She directly struck out with her palm, and surging spiritual power was produced and pressed forward. Strangely, when she struck out with her palm, it was as if she had struck an invisible barrier and was actually bounced back. There's a spiritual array protecting it. Wan Qirong reacted very quickly and dodged to the side. She frowned. At this time, the other figures also arrived. Hiss! Nie Tian came within 500 meters of the Destiny Spirit Ginseng and immediately became cautious. He couldn't help but gasp. He could feel that the spiritual array protecting the Destiny Spirit Ginseng was very strong. It was at least a rank 7 spiritual array. A rank 7 spiritual array. Even if all the spiritual array masters in the 3,000 small worlds were called, they might not be able to break it. Previously, Nie Tian had already felt that the Destiny Spirit Array's invisible root was intertwined. It was obviously a spiritual array. However, he thought that the spiritual array at the root was only used by the Destiny Spirit Ginseng to absorb the spiritual power of heaven and earth. He didn't expect that it could also protect itself. In fact, it should be clear that if the Destiny Spirit Ginseng didn't have any means to protect itself, not to mention other warriors, even the spiritual beasts in the Destiny Forest could directly eat it. This culprit who caused the internal strife actually has the protection of a rank 7 spiritual array. No one could do anything about it. Nie Tian smiled bitterly. Because of the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, dozens of people were killed or injured. Now, there were only a dozen people left. Now that he was close to the spiritual ginseng, he realized that it was something that he could only look at but not touch. However, Nie Tian knew that the heavenly fate spirit ginseng was just a fuse. Even without this fuse, Wan Qirong would still kill the other martial artists. She was just waiting for the next opportunity. Sigh. Yao Fei found it hard to hide his disappointment and let out a long sigh. He was an expert in spiritual arrays, so he could naturally tell how powerful the spiritual array in front of him was. It was definitely not something he could break. However, the other cultivators were not as smart. Although they sensed the presence of the array, they were not disappointed. Instead, they directly attacked. Instantly, more than a dozen powerful chi waves were unleashed and collided with the spiritual array. However, they were all bounced back. Ah, ah, ah. Screams rang out as several warriors were injured by their own attacks. At this time, the spirit ginseng of destiny suddenly underwent a strange change. The originally invisible roots gradually manifested and extended for dozens of meters. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws. They were still countless slender white snakes. The spirit ginseng of heaven and earth was only the size of a fist, but its roots were more than 10 meters long. They were very dense and wrapped around its entire body, turning the spirit ginseng into a dazzling white ball of fur. Dense heaven and earth spiritual chi was immediately released. Everyone felt refreshed. The heaven and earth spiritual chi seemed to be everywhere. It drilled into the bodies of the cultivators, nourishing their yuan meridians and purifying their bodies. Just the chi that the spirit ginseng naturally released had such miraculous effects. If it was refined into a spiritual dan, it would be comparable to a level 9 spiritual dan, maybe even higher. Nietian's previous injuries were not light. After a short period of nourishment from the spirit ginseng, he instantly recovered a lot. The spirit ginseng's miraculous effects were evident. Boom, boom, boom. However, just as everyone was immersed in absorbing the chi from the spirit ginseng, the cliff in the distance suddenly trembled. It was as if the entire cliff was about to collapse. Nietian's expression changed. He felt an extremely powerful chi from within the cliff. It was as if there was a giant beast galloping inside the mountain. What a powerful chi! The other cultivators also felt that something was wrong. Their expressions changed as they looked at the cliff in shock. Boom, 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 boom. The cliff shook even more violently. The entire mountain was on the verge of collapsing. Run! At this moment, no matter what it was, everyone only had one thought in their mind. Leave. However, just as everyone was about to leave, they suddenly found that the space around them seemed to have been filled with cement. It was completely solidified. There was also an invisible force that was pressing down on them, making it hard for them to breathe. Nietian turned around and saw the spirit ginseng's roots swaying slightly, as if it was shaking in water. He suddenly understood that the giant beast inside the mountain was summoned by the spirit ginseng. F*CK. This spirit ginseng is too strange. It actually knows how to call for help. Nietian's forehead was covered in cold sweat. His face was pale. He had read in an ancient book that some divine herbs were like spirit beasts. Once they surpassed level 9, they could evolve their own consciousness. Could it be that the spirit ginseng had evolved its own consciousness? Thinking of this, Nietian felt a chill run down his spine. What's going on? Why can't your father move? A martial artist screamed in shock, shouting until his throat was sore. Nietian glanced at Yao Fik. The latter had a Tier 5 spirit array protecting him. He was clearly much more relaxed than the others. His body could still move slowly. At this time, hoping for others to save him was absolutely impossible. In the face of a great disaster, who would care about others? Everyone cared about their own people. Their parents died, and their parents got married. Boom! Right at this time, the 100,000-foot mountain suddenly exploded with a heaven-shaking sound. The entire mountain suddenly swelled up. A huge bump protruded out, as if something had smashed fiercely from the inside. Mommy, what in the world is this thing? Why is it so terrifying? A martial artist cried out miserably. And at this time, Yao Fik brought Wang Haoshuan and had already left several hundred meters away. Suddenly, they felt the pressure around them disappear. The two figures sped up and left quickly. Boom! Following that, another loud bang rang out. The mountain finally could not withstand it. It ruptured and collapsed. Countless boulders burst out. An enormous giant beast rushed out from within the mountain. The moment the giant beast rushed out, everyone froze. The entire world turned dark. The giant beast's body was huge. It was 1,000 meters long. Its sudden appearance blocked most of the light. The world was dark. The giant beast's body was pitch black, as if it was covered in black iron. Looking closely, there were actually protruding thorns on its body. It looked incomparably hard and indestructible. What was even more strange was that the giant beast's face was somewhat similar to a human's. On its head, there were 2 black claws that were hundreds of meters long. It emitted a horrifying aura that made people feel suffocated. F***CK. It's actually a human-faced demon scorpion. Inside the chaotic original coffin, Corpse Lord Demon King's throat went dry. Human-faced demon scorpion? Hearing Corpse Lord Demon King's cry, Nyetian narrowed his eyes. Looking closely, the black giant beast looked like a giant scorpion. Chapter 489. In his previous life, Nyetian had personally slain a demonic dragon of the demonic race. This kind of spirit beast, which claimed to be a descendant of the ancient dragon race, was only a few hundred meters long, far less terrifying than this man-faced demonic scorpion. Corpse Luo Demon Lord's voice sounded again. Man-faced demonic scorpions can only grow to about 10 meters long. How did this guy grow so big? Scorpion-type spirit beasts were originally small spirit beasts. Being able to grow to 10 meters was already considered huge, but this kind of behemoth that was thousands of meters long was simply unimaginable. Corpse Luo, are you sure you're not mistaken? Nyetian asked in astonishment. Corpse Luo Demon Lord desperately shook his small head, shouting, "There is absolutely no mistake. This face, this aura, this is the man-faced demonic scorpion." Then how did it grow so big? Nyetian exclaimed, but in the next moment, the man-faced demonic scorpion had already rushed over. Crack! Crack! The huge claws collided with each other, the bloody and violent aura that rushed over, almost completely crushing people. Who? The man-faced demonic scorpion's huge body rolled over, using some unknown power to fly in the air. The bloody aura was almost solid. This was the most realistic aura of death. All the martial artist's eyes were written with one word: despair. Facing such a huge beast, there was no way to resist, only waiting for death. Hua! Hua! The man-faced demonic scorpion's claws slashed down, like 2 huge swords tearing the heaven and earth, directly cutting through the space, revealing a dazzling white light. And at this moment, the invisible force that firmly imprisoned everyone loosened a little. Retreat! Nyetian roared. The wings on his back opened again, explosively retreating. Wan Shirong also reacted at the first moment. The 6 words ghost language technique formed a ghost language barrier around her body, shooting out a few hundred meters. Everyone else could not react in time, or rather, they had already given up on resisting when the huge claws slashed across. Just the invisible force that could tear through everything was already unbearable. More than a dozen martial artists above the true element level 5 did not have the slightest bit of resistance, not even having the chance to scream, directly crushed under the huge claws. Who? Although Ngan had dodged the human-faced devil scorpion's attack head-on. The fierce wind that was as sharp as a blade still blew past him. Blood spurted out of his wounds and gushed out like a fountain. Leave. He didn't care about his own injuries at all. His silhouette retreated rapidly, pulling a few thousand meters away from the human-faced demon scorpion. Nyetian could sense that the human-faced devil scorpion strength was sufficient to contend with Heavenly Emperor realm martial artists. It was seriously too terrifying. Wan Shirong's injuries were not light either, but she had also escaped to a safe place. Fortunately, the human-faced demon scorpion didn't chase after them. Its huge body seemed to be swimming in the air as it slowly approached the fateful spirit ginseng. When it was about to touch the spirit ginseng's brilliance, it cautiously stopped. It was like a devout believer, not daring to take even half a step forward. A wood dash. Next, the human-faced demon scorpion let out a strange roar, as if to demonstrate its might. It was warning Nyetian and the others not to approach the spirit destiny ginseng. Sure enough, the The human-faced demon scorpion was the spirit destiny ginseng's guardian spiritual beast. Nyetian had read in ancient texts that all divinity-grade medicinal plants that had developed intelligence would form agreements with powerful spirit beasts in a way that was similar to soul contracts, in which they would use the spirit beast's power to protect themselves. Obviously, the human-phased demon scorpion was the powerful spiritual beast that had formed a pact with the spirit destiny ginseng. But this guardian spiritual beast was a little too strong. It was actually at the heavenly emperor realm. Master! Suddenly, Corpse Luo Demon King's voice sounded again, screaming. The chaotic abyss is the battlefield of the ancient war of gods and demons. This human-phased demon scorpion must be an ancient mutated species, and it absorbed the spirit destiny ginseng strength. That's why it grew so big. An ancient species. Nyetian's eyes flickered, and a hint of blazing desire appeared in them. In the ancient times, during the war of gods and demons, there were real divine realm martial artists. Moreover, the ancient mutated spiritual beasts at that time were existences that surpassed rank 9 spiritual beasts, comparable to the dragon race. Therefore, the blood chi of the ancient mutated spiritual beasts was unimaginably strong. If he could cut open the stomach of this human-faced demon scorpion and absorb its blood chi, it would definitely be a qualitative leap for a martial artist. Master, you can't be thinking of taking advantage of this human-faced demon scorpion, right? Corpse Luo, Demon King, sensed the fluctuation of Nyetian's emotions, and his voice trembled. Nyetian smiled faintly and said, "It's just a casual thought." He only had the strength of a 4th-layer giant spirit. If he could obtain the nourishment of the human-faced demon scorpion's blood chi, he could definitely advance to the true energy realm in a short time. If he reached the true energy realm, he could at least fight with a powerhouse like Wan Qirong in the Heavenly Fate Forest. Unfortunately, this was just a random thought. If anyone knew that Nyetian was thinking of taking advantage of the human-faced demon scorpion, they would definitely think that he was crazy. The human-phased demon scorpion was only guarding the spirit destiny ginseng, and had no intention of chasing after Nyetian and Wan Qirong. Oh, whoa! Once again, the human-phased demon scorpion let out a strange roar. The roar was deep and profound, like an ancient horn, warning Nyetian and the others to leave immediately. The bloody aura that assaulted their faces made them tremble with fear. Leave! Wan Qirong was heavily injured, and after giving Nyetian a hateful look, she leaped and left. Nyetian looked at the human-faced demon scorpion and the spirit destiny ginseng, feeling somewhat reluctant. He entered the secret territory this time for the spirit destiny ginseng. Now that he had found it, but couldn't obtain it, he was naturally anxious. He knew that Queen Medusa was not a kind person. If he returned to the Naga territory empty-handed, the latter would definitely not show any mercy, and whether Nyetian could live or not was a problem. Master, let's leave first. If we really anger the human-faced demon scorpion, it would be terrible. Corpse Luo Demon King reminded in fear. Okay, let's leave first. Nyetian took a deep look at the human-faced demon scorpion and the spirit destiny ginseng, and finally decided to leave. With a flash, Nyetian chose to leave in the opposite direction from Wan Qirong. Descending from the sky, Nyetian arrived at a remote valley. In the twilight barrier, he was heavily injured. First, he was injured by Wan Hao. Then he suffered the backlash of the Weeping Blood Soul slash. And then he was attacked by the human-faced demon scorpion. His body was extremely weak now. After sensing the surroundings and making sure there was no one around, Nyetian immediately sat down cross-legged and began to heal his injuries. Nyetian's body had fused with the 9-star dragon vein, and his recovery speed was astonishing. In addition, the chaotic original coffin gave him 10 times more time than others. After more than an hour, his injuries were mostly healed. It's time to find Elder Yi and the others. Nyetian stood up and was about to find Elder Yi and the others. Suddenly, he remembered something, and his expression changed. Oh no! Nyetian screamed. He did not see Tawny just now, and thinking of her obsession with the crimson soul red lotus, it was not hard to guess that she must have gone to find Gu Wuyo. Elder Yi was heavily injured, and Duanmulu, Gu Wuyo, and the others were not a match for Tawny. Thinking of this, Nye Tian's pupils shrank slightly, and a feeling of uneasiness welled up in his heart. Just as he was about to leave, he heard a voice behind him. Nye Tian turned around, and the scene in front of him made him feel as if his brain had exploded, and he was completely stunned. Chapter 490. The moment he saw the figure in front of him, Nye Tian felt all the blood in his body freeze. He could only inhale but not exhale. His expression was completely stiff, because this figure was simply too beautiful. Her snow-white skin was like white jade. Her exquisite facial features made people feel a soul-stirring beauty. Her curvaceous figure was incomparably perfect. Beautiful, too perfect. Her beauty was enough to shock the mortal world. She was so beautiful that it was unreal, so beautiful that it should not exist. Everything in front of this woman was overshadowed. Nye Tian was completely stunned. He felt that everything around him had disappeared. There was only an extremely beautiful figure in front of him. Standing in place, Nye Tian was stunned for a full 10 seconds. At a certain moment, the beautiful figure suddenly walked over. His blood was boiling again. "What's wrong with you? Are you sick?" The girl raised her fair arm and waved her small, sparkling palm in front of Nye Tian's face. An expression of confusion and worry appeared on her exquisite face. Her voice was very pleasant. It was like the sound of wind chimes, like the sound of nature. Gulp! Nye Tian swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His nearly stiff body finally reacted, and his brain, which had been empty for a long time, began to work again. He took a few steps back and subconsciously distanced himself from the girl. "Are you afraid of me?" The girl looked at Nye Tian. Her eyes were crystal clear like a newborn baby's, without the slightest impurity. Pure. Only the purest people could have such clear eyes. Her body exuded the unique fragrance of a girl. It was soft and charming, making one's imagination run wild. This girl was too pure. Her aura was incompatible with the filthy surroundings. Afraid, Nye Tian took a deep breath. His throat moved again. He was indeed afraid. However, he was not afraid of the girl in front of him. He was afraid that he could not control himself. Phew, phew, phew. After exhaling 3 mouthfuls of foul air, Nye Tian finally calmed down a lot. He looked at the girl in front of him and asked, "Who are you? Why are you here?" When Nye Tian entered the canyon just now, he had already carefully sensed everything within a kilometer around him. He did not find anyone's aura. So how could this girl suddenly appear? Moreover, she was so strange, not wearing even half a piece of clothing. "My name is Cher. My house is right here," the young girl replied. Her voice was innocent, and she didn't seem to be on guard against Nye Tian at all. "Your house is here?" Nye Tian was slightly stunned, his eyes deliberately avoiding the girl's body. This was the chaotic abyss, the ancient battlefield of the ancient war of gods and devils. It was extremely dangerous, and danger lurked everywhere. A teenage girl without the slightest trace of origin energy actually said that she lived here. Could such words be trusted? If these words came out of anyone else's mouth, they would definitely be lying. However, since it came from the mouth of this young lady, it was definitely true. Her eyes were too pure and innocent. It was impossible for someone with such eyes to lie. "That's right, my house is right here." Cher seemed to be amused by Nye Tian's strange reaction. She laughed and pointed at the cave behind her. Nye Tian looked around and discovered that there was actually a cave at the back of the canyon. After thinking for a while, Nye Tian took out a few clothes from his spatial ring and threw them to Cher. "You should put on some clothes." Talking to such a perfect body was very difficult for Nye Tian. "Clothes!" Cher caught the clothes that Nye Tian threw over. Her beautiful eyes flickered slightly, and she frowned. "It's too dirty. I don't want to wear it." Nye Tian was speechless. These were all new clothes that he had prepared for himself, and he hadn't even touched them. "All right, I'll wear it." Seeing that Nyetian was a little embarrassed, Cher was very obedient. She began to put on the clothes slowly, but after a long while, she still couldn't put them on and tore them. "You've never worn clothes before?" Nyetian was speechless. "Yeah, Cece and I don't wear clothes at all," Cher said seriously. Nyetian was speechless. This family is really strange. Even if they are isolated from the world, they still have to wear clothes. "Cece," all of a sudden, Nyetian exclaimed. "You're not the only one here." Snow had said a name earlier, and it sounded like it was a girl as well. "Yes." Shue nodded and said, "Xiao and I are staying in the cave. That lazy guy must be sleeping." Nyetian nodded speechlessly and threw another set of clothes to Cher. Cher took the clothes and looked at them for a long time. Finally, she looked at Nyetian and said, "Can you help me put them on?" Gulp! Nyetian's throat moved, and he was stunned for a long time. He had helped a girl put on clothes before. It was the night when he helped Mo Rushi awaken her original spirit. The latter was unconscious, so he helped her put on clothes. But the girl in front of him was a living person, and he felt guilty if he helped her put on clothes. "All right, I'll put them on myself." Cher saw Nyetian's hesitation and nodded with grievance. While putting on the clothes, she muttered, "You asked me to put them on, but I don't know how to put them on, and you didn't help me either." She was very dissatisfied with Nyetian. After a lot of effort, Cher finally put on the clothes, but it was a bit too big, and the sleeves and trousers were protruding. Nyetian wanted her to fold up the sleeves and trousers, but thinking that it was hard for her to put on clothes, he gave up on such a difficult action. In any case, such a beautiful girl wearing clothes like this would look very good, and it would be a little more comical. "Cher, did you say that your home is here?" After Cher put on the clothes, Nyetian's eyes slightly narrowed. He still couldn't believe that there was actually someone living in the Destiny Forest. Nyetian could feel that Cher didn't have any elemental energy fluctuations, and there weren't even any elemental meridians in her body. He really didn't know how she managed to live so long. "Yes, I've lived here with Cece since I was young. Cece has never left the valley, and I haven't even left the valley. Cece said that it's too dangerous outside and doesn't let me go out," Cher said with grievance, as if she was dissatisfied with Cece. Cece, when Nyetian heard this name, he felt that it was a little weird and asked, "Who is Cece to you?" "My friend, we grew up together," Cher replied, and then suddenly thought of something and exclaimed, "Oh no, Cece is about to wake up. He doesn't allow others to come to our house, and if he knows that you're here, he will definitely be very angry." "It's okay. If he's angry, I'll just apologize to him." Nyetian smiled faintly and didn't seem to care. After all, he was the one who barged into the valley without permission and disturbing the other party, so he should apologize. Hiss! At this moment, a strange sound came from a cave. Chapter 491. This voice. Nyetian's face turned pale when he heard the sudden sound from the cave. He clearly felt that an extremely strong aura had appeared in the cave, which had been peaceful a moment ago. This aura made Nyetian tremble inexplicably. "Master, the aura in the cave is so terrifying." Corpse Demon King's voice also sounded. Nyetian finally understood why Cher could survive for so long in the Destiny Forest. It turned out that she had such a powerful companion. The aura in the cave far surpassed any martial artist that Nyetian had met in the 3,000 small worlds. Judging from the aura alone, this person's strength was definitely above the heavenly evolution realm, or even higher. Clatter! At this time, there was a sudden violent sound coming from the cave, as if there was a huge thing rolling. F***CK. What the hell is that? Nyetian suddenly sensed that the thing that was about to come out of the cave wasn't human at all. With a loud roar, he strode forward, grabbed Schwer's hand, and ran towards the exit of the valley at full speed. Cher did not expect Nyetian to suddenly do this. She screamed, but couldn't stop him. She was directly dragged out of the canyon by the ladder. Boom! Just as Nyetian pulled Cher out of the canyon, a huge figure suddenly fell from the sky, and its huge body directly blocked their way. Nietion's figure suddenly stopped, and when he saw clearly what was blocking his way, his face instantly froze. In front of him, there was a huge snake that was several meters thick and more than 100 meters long. It stood up like a human, and the huge snake's tongue flicked in and out. The bloody and violent aura was like a solid substance, and it was so oppressive that Nietion could not breathe. Nietion was only a few meters away from the huge snake, and he could clearly see every scale on its body. What surprised him was that there was actually a colorful ring on the body of this huge snake, releasing a faint halo, and there were 2 dragon horns on its head. Cher, leave first. Nietion spread, opened his arms, and protected Cher behind him. He wanted to fight desperately, but he actually noticed to his shock that the origin meridians within his body were directly sealed, causing him to be unable to circulate his origin energy, and he wasn't even able to release the slightest bit of origin energy. Pressure of aura. Absolute pressure of aura. The giant snake's aura was too strong, and it suppressed Nietion to the point that he couldn't fight back. Hiss! The giant snake let out a shrill cry that shook everyone's eardrums. It stared at Nietion with its bell-like eyes, tyrannical and bloodthirsty. Phew! The next moment, the giant snake opened its mouth wide, and a wave of bloody energy rushed out. Nietion wanted to retreat, but his legs felt as if they were filled with 10,000 tons of cement, and he couldn't move a single step. Oh no! With a deep roar, Nietion's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. In front of the giant snake, he didn't have the slightest ability to resist. The giant snake twisted its head and swallowed him in one gulp. The sudden burst of aura made Nietion feel despair, but he didn't give up. Although his origin meridians were sealed, he could still move his body. He lowered his body, hugged Cher who was behind him, and rolled on the ground, skillfully dodging the giant snake's fatal attack. Nietion was pressed on Cher's body, and he felt something soft on his chest. He suddenly thought of something, and his breathing became rapid. Cher, however, didn't have any strange reaction. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and she shouted, "Shushi, don't hurt him." Shushi? Nietion was stunned, and thought to himself, this girl must be scared silly. Shushi was sleeping in the cave, and suddenly such a giant snake appeared. She must be in the snake's stomach. But strangely, after hearing Cher's voice, the giant snake's body suddenly stopped in midair, and it didn't move an inch. Nietion stood up and suddenly realized something. His mouth opened, but he couldn't say anything. The Shushi that Cher was talking about was this giant snake. As expected, Cher took 2 steps forward, and her voice became gentle, and she said with a very patient look, "Shushi, be good. He isn't a bad person. He won't hurt us." The giant snake quieted down, and its giant head slowly lay on the ground. Cher actually went forward and kissed it lightly, and let out a bell-like laughter. Cher knows, Shushi is the most obedient. Gulp. Nietion swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and his brain couldn't wrap around it for a long time. In front of the giant snake, even if he was a bad person, he could only be hurt. He is Shushi? After the giant snake completely calmed down, Nietion went forward and asked carefully. At this moment, the giant snake's tyrannical aura had completely disappeared, and there wasn't the slightest bit of elemental energy fluctuation on its giant body. The 7-colored halo around its body had also dimmed, and it was like a docile little sheep. Nietion carefully sensed, but he actually couldn't sense anything. If the giant snake intentionally concealed its aura, it was simply like a rock, and it could escape any kind of perception. Yes, Cher nodded, and with a flip, she directly leaped onto Shushi's head. She grabbed onto one of the dragon horns with both hands, and she had an extremely proud look on her face as she laughed. Shushi is usually very obedient. Just now, I thought you were a bad person, so I got angry. As Cher spoke, she lightly leaped onto the sleeping bag between the 2 horns of the giant snake. That was where she usually slept and rested. Nietion had a helpless look on his face. No wonder he would misunderstand. Which normal person would name a giant creature Shushi? Ah, right. I still don't know your name. Cher rolled around in the sleeping bag and laughed as she asked, "My name is Nietion. Where's this place? Why are you here?" Nietion asked curiously. He knew that this was the Destiny Forest, but the lineup of a young girl and a giant snake was too strange, and he really couldn't understand. Nietion. Cher laid in the sleeping bag with both of her hands supporting her chin. Her clear eyes seriously sized up Nietion, and she said, "This is the Rainbow Valley. I was born here." "Then your parents?" Nietion originally wanted to ask about Cher's parents, but he swallowed his words halfway. She probably didn't even know who her parents were. He guessed that Cher should have been abandoned by her parents in the Rainbow Valley, but she was lucky enough to be found by the giant snake and raised. But that didn't make sense either. There shouldn't be any humans in the chaotic abyss. So where did Cher come from? She was obviously not a demon, because demons couldn't enter the Destiny Forest. Thinking about this, Nietion felt that his mind was a bit messed up. He decisively gave up and stopped thinking about it. At this time, Shushi spat out its tongue, as if it was saying something to Cher. "Ah!" Cher cried out in surprise, and said seriously, "Shushi said that someone is coming. We're going back to the valley. You should come with us." "Someone is coming?" Nietion was stunned. He spread out his divine sense, but couldn't sense anything. However, he suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed as he cried out, "Oh no, Elder Yi!" Just now, Nietion was going to find Elder Yi and the others, but he was interrupted by Cher's sudden appearance. Now that he suddenly thought of it, his heart couldn't help but sink, and he immediately ran out. "Hey, where are you going?" Cher's voice sounded from behind him. "It's urgent. I'm going to find my friend." Nietion shouted as he ran. "Will we meet again?" Cher anxiously shouted. Chapter 492. Cher looked in the direction where Nietion disappeared with a sad expression. She pursed her lips and reluctantly entered the valley with Xiao. This man was the first man she had seen. Unknowingly, something seemed to have changed. Xiao seemed to have sensed the change in Cher. It shook its head as if it was sighing. After leaving the seven-colored valley, Nietion ran at full speed and unleashed his divine sense. To his surprise, he didn't see a single person, not even the slightest sign of movement. There's actually no one. Nietion stopped and leaped onto a giant tree that was hundreds of meters tall. After a few leaps, he reached the top of the tree. She clearly sensed that someone was coming. Why couldn't it find him? "Master, I felt that the snake was a little strange." Corpse Lord's voice came from the chaotic original coffin. "That snake is a little similar to the demonic dragon." Nietion nodded. She was indeed different from ordinary snakes. It had horns on its head, and its body was covered in colorful snake scales. It was very unusual. "Master, the demonic dragon is a divine dragon subspecies. Could that snake be a divine dragon subspecies too?" Corpse Lord suddenly said. Nietion narrowed his eyes. It was possible. Xiaoxi's aura was very strong. It was comparable to a human heavenly evolution realm martial artist. Nietion guessed that it was only about 100 years old. 100 years was a long time for humans, but for snakes, it was almost equivalent to their infancy. A juvenile spirit beast had the strength of a heavenly evolution realm martial artist. It was stronger than a 7th grade spirit beast. Its terrifying potential was self-evident. There's really someone. Just as Nietion was puzzled, dozens of martial artists' auras appeared in his divine senses. 500 meters away from Nietion, many familiar figures appeared. They were from the Mo clan, Xiao clan, and the Alchemist Guild. Nietion was slightly stunned. They came to the Destiny Forest too? The Mo clan, Xiao clan, and the others left the territory of the Nagas. Queen Medusa even sent people to escort them. What a cunning Medusa. Nietion instantly realized that it wasn't a coincidence that these people had appeared in the Forest of Destiny. Empress Medusa must have sent people to deliver them to the Forest of Destiny. Therefore, even if they did not want to enter the forest, they had no choice. Queen Medusa did not care about the life of the human warriors. If someone else got the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, she could snatch it for herself. Even though this serpentine woman seemed to trust Nietion, The truth was that she only saw him as a chess piece. Nie Tian didn't want to cause any unnecessary trouble, so he wanted to leave. However, just as he was about to turn around, several figures appeared in another direction, running madly. "It's Elder Yi," Nie Tian said as he looked over. They were none other than Elder Yi and the others. In the next moment, Nie Tian immediately sensed a figure chasing after them. As expected, it was the great Chu Imperial Preceptor, Hu Xiaoli. Oh no! Seeing the direction in which Elder Yi and the others were running, Nie Tian's heart sank. They were running in the direction of the Mo clan, and they were only a few hundred meters away. Behind them was Tawny. In front of them were the Mo clan and the Chiu clan. Elder Yi and the others were already in danger. "Elder Yi, over here!" Nie Tian couldn't care less. He shouted and landed beside Elder Yi and the others. At this time, besides Duanmu Lu and Gu Wuyo, there was also Battle Cloud Sec Zhan Xiaoi and 2 guards who were at the 5th level of True Element Realm with Elder Yi. Apart from these people, Wan Churong, Rui Qinyu, and the faceless man whose whereabouts were unknown, everyone else was basically dead. Nie Tian's group had only been in the Destiny Nether Forest for a day, but they had already suffered heavy casualties. Nie Tian. When Elder Yi saw that it was Nie Tian, he was very excited. He was heavily injured. Obviously, he had fought with Tawny. Elder Yi was already heavily injured when he fought with Wan Chirong. His essence force was almost depleted, and fighting with Tawny made his injuries even worse. "Let's leave first." Nie Tian didn't say much and prepared to escape towards the Rainbow Valley. If they could enter the Rainbow Valley, they would be safe with the protection of the snake. "Want to run?" A sharp voice sounded. Tawny's figure was extremely fast. She arrived in an instant with a cold smile on her face. She was filled with killing intent as she sneered. "Nie Tian, you came at the right time. Let's die together." Tawny's malicious gaze swept across everyone and finally landed on Gu Wuyo. She didn't fight for the Destiny Spirit Ginseng because she wanted the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus in Gu Wuyo's body. Previously at the Rising Dragon platform, Tawny had already seen that the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus had grown and could be moved again. After so many years, Tawny didn't make a move because she wanted to wait for the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus to grow and move again. Although she knew that Gu Wuyo would die once the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus left her body, she didn't care at all. "Lord Imperial Preceptor, you came for the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus in my body, right?" Gu Wuyo frowned and said coldly. Tawny smiled faintly and said, "Don't treat me like an outsider. I am your aunt." "Aunt?" Gu Wuyo was stunned. "Yes." Tawny's beautiful eyes flickered. Her tone was filled with ridicule and anger. She said, "Your mother is my sister, so I am your aunt. But this sister of mine only has eyes for your damn father. She disregarded the clan's rules and married an outsider, gave birth to you, and even planted the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus mark in your body. The Scarlet Soul Red Lotus is the national soul of the Red Lotus clan. How could she leave it on an outsider?" Gu Wuyo's eyes were dazed for a moment, but she quickly recovered and displayed an extraordinary you. She asked coldly, "My parents, did you kill them?" "So what if I did?" Tawny smiled coldly. "Your father is a liar. He tricked my sister away. Your mother violated the clan's rules and even gave you the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus. They all deserve to die. Bastard." Gu Wuyo's suppressed anger finally exploded. She roared, "You even killed your own sister. Are you even human?" "I really don't care if I'm human or not. I only want the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus." Tawny didn't care about Gu Wuyo's scolding at all. She only had eyes for the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus. As long as she obtained the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus, she would be able to become the ruler of the Red Lotus clan. This was what Tawny wanted. "Ha! Nie Tian, it really is you. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road." At this moment, an insolent voice was heard. The person who spoke was the Alchemist Guild's red-clothed elder, Diao Jingda. "Master Diao, the world-defying Wildblade, is also here." Wu Meng, who was behind Diao Jingda, saw Elder Yi at first glance. His eyes were filled with fear. He stopped and didn't dare to step forward. Chapter 493. Arrogant Mad Blade Yi Linyan. The heavens really have eyes to let us meet you here. Mo Phone walked up with an unconcealable smile on his face. His eyes roamed around Elder Ye's body, full of mockery. Qiu Wuheng also took a step forward. His eyes were even more contemptuous than Mo Feng's. He sneered, "Crippled tiger, let's see how you can show off now." Both of them had been humiliated by Elder Yi. Now that the latter was seriously injured, they naturally became fierce like a tiger. Despicable. There was no fear in Elder Ye's eyes at all. He only regretted that he had been soft-hearted back then and hadn't killed these two guys in Chaos City. Tawny saw others coming and knew that Diao Jingde and the others were not easy to deal with. She rolled her eyes and automatically took a step back. She wanted to wait for both sides to fight and then take advantage of the chaos to make a move on Gu Wuyo. Tian knew that things were not going well. Tawny alone was hard enough to deal with. Now that Mo Feng and the others had come, it was like adding snow to snow. Mo Feng, Qiu Wuheng, Wu Meng, and the others were all spirit wheel experts. Even if they were suppressed, they were at least at the 5th level of true element. In contrast, on Tian's side, apart from him and the 2 5th-level true element warriors from the Battle Cloud sect, the others had almost no fighting strength. "Everyone, we are from the Battle Cloud sect. We do not want to get involved in your dispute. We will leave now." At this time, a guard from the Battle Cloud sect stepped forward and said, their main purpose in coming to the Chaos Abyss was to protect Zhang Xiaoyi and the others. Now, only 3 of the 10 people were left. Even the Battle Cloud sect's vice sect leader Zhang Lang was dead. If Zhang Xiaoyi, the young sect leader, also died, it would be a complete annihilation. Moreover, the people from the Battle Cloud sect were traveling with Elder Yi and the others for safety. In this situation, of course, they had to retreat. "Zhanan, what are you talking about? Since we are companions, of course we have to advance and retreat together. I would rather die with Duanmu brothers than run away." Zhang Xiaoyi glared at Zhanan fearlessly. Zhang Xiaoyi and Duanmu Lu had ascended to the dragon platform together. He had already regarded the latter as a brother. If he ran away when his brother was in trouble, what kind of brother would he be? "Young lord," Zhanan still wanted to say something, but seeing Zhang Xiaoyi's determined expression, he already knew that it was useless to say anything more. "Brother Zhang." Duanmu Lu had always been a temperamental person. Seeing Xiaoyi's reaction, he couldn't help but be slightly moved. "Brother Duanmu." Zhang Xiaoyi suddenly walked over and said loudly, "Although we don't know each other for long, I see you as my best friend and am willing to become sworn brothers with you." "Are you willing?" "I'm willing." Duanmu Lu was extremely agitated. Actually, he already had this idea in his heart, but he never had the chance to voice it out. At this moment, when they were in danger, and Zhang Xiaoyi had taken the initiative to suggest it, he naturally could not refuse. "Big brother, please accept this little brother's salute." Duanmu Lu knelt on one knee and saluted. "All right." Zhang Xiaoyi pulled him up and laughed. "From today onwards, you and I are brothers. We will live and die together, advance and retreat together." Everyone was slightly moved when they saw this. For the two of them to become sworn brothers at this moment of life and death, it showed their true friendship. Live and die together, advance and retreat together. Mo Feng smiled coldly and said arrogantly, "You're still putting on a show when you're about to die." The 2 guards from the Battle Cloud clan looked at each other. They knew that it was impossible for them to escape unscathed today. "Do it." Qiu Wuhen was already impatient. He immediately locked his gaze on Elder Yi. He still remembered the slap that the latter gave him. Today, he wanted to get back at him with interest. "Mr. Nya, step back." Elder Yi stepped forward fearlessly and said arrogantly, "A bunch of rascals. I, Frenzy Blade, can stop you all by myself." Swoosh! The reverse blade of serene essence appeared in Elder Ye's hand. The blade flashed, and a deep mark appeared on the ground. He said loudly, "Those who cross this line will be killed without mercy." As his arrogant and unruly voice fell, the dozens of people on the opposite side felt a chill run down their spines. They actually did not dare to step forward. "Elder Yi." Tian clenched his fists tightly, extremely moved. "Ha ha ha. Elder Yi laughed wildly and shouted, Mr. Nya, don't worry. Wildblade, will not die so easily. Is that so? Mo Feng smiled coldly and shouted, Men, kill him for me. His roar was very imposing, but unfortunately, the people behind him did not move at all. Everyone present had heard of Yulin Yun's amazing deeds from 80 years ago. Moreover, they had seen him easily defeat Mo Feng, Qiu Wuhan, and Wu Meng, 3 spirit wheel realm experts. With this kind of deterrence, how would they dare to take even half a step forward? Mo Feng frowned and suddenly turned around. He shouted to a Mo family warrior behind him, You go and kill him, Lord Elder. That person was so scared that his face turned pale. He repeatedly waved his hand and shook his head, subconsciously retreating. Trash! Mo Feng scolded and turned his gaze to the others. Everyone was retreating. Even if Wildblade was seriously injured, not everyone dared to touch the tiger's whiskers. Elder Yi laughed wildly. With a look of contempt, he said, Mo family's elder, Mo Zhaojing, is also considered a character, but you, an elder of the Mo family, are not even 1/10,000th of him. You have really lost the face of the Mo family. If you want to kill me, do it yourself. Why threaten others? Mo Feng's old face was green and red. He glanced at Elder Yi, unable to conceal the fear in his heart. That day, Elder Yi shocked him too much. Now that he thought about it, he still had a lingering fear. As the saying goes, a centipede dies but does not fall down. Even if Yulin Yun was seriously injured now, who knew what other life-saving methods he had? If he rashly made a move and was killed instead, it would not be worth it. Brother Mo, Commander Wu, let's join forces and kill him. Qiu Wuhan looked at Mo Feng and Wu Meng and said shamelessly. Facing a seriously injured person, they still wanted to join forces and attack. This kind of shamelessness was really unparalleled. Mo Feng and Wu Meng both had the same idea, but they were too embarrassed to say it. Now that Qiu Wuhan said it, they naturally agreed. Nie Tian and the others were simply speechless. These 3 fellows were so shameless that they were in their mother's womb. The 3 of you, make your move. Diao Jingde smiled provocatively and said, The 3 of you joining forces to kill Wildblade is not shameful at all. Saying it so confidently, Diao Jingde was even more shameless than the other 3. Kill! Mo Feng, Qiu Wuhan, and Wu Meng nodded at the same time. With a fierce roar, they attacked together. 3 palm shadows surged out, and a sudden burst of aura swept over like a shocking wave. Everyone's heart trembled, and they all retreated. Come at me. Facing the joint attack of the 3, Elder Yi did not retreat at all. He actually laughed wildly. His originally weak body suddenly burst out with a vigorous aura. Saber chi filled his whole body, and blood chi surged. In the air, an unparalleled blood-colored saber shadow appeared and suddenly rushed out. Chapter 494. Boom! The blood-colored saber shadow crashed down like a collapsing mountain, directly shattering the joint attack of Mo Feng and the other 2. The 3 figures flew out and screamed in the air. After landing heavily on the ground, they vomited blood and their faces were as pale as paper. It was obvious that they were heavily injured. Seeing this scene, everyone took a deep breath and broke out in a cold sweat. How is this possible? Yulin Yun was clearly an arrow at the end of its flight. How could he still burst out such a terrifying power? Not only did he shatter the joint attack of the 3, but he also seriously injured them. It was unbelievable. Silence. The whole place was dead silent. This is impossible. After a while, the first person to react was Diao Jingde. His eyes almost popped out as he roared angrily. Elder Yi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at Diao Jingde with murderous eyes, scaring the latter into retreating. Elder Yi, Nie Tian woke up as if he had just woken up from a dream. The others might not know what happened, but he saw it clearly. Under Elder Ye's slash just now, the saber aura was bloody and violent, and a strange blood-colored avatar appeared. That was the spirit of the saber. Elder Yi burned his saber foundation and sacrificed his saber realm to make a shocking slash, severely injuring Mo Feng and the other two. Previously, Elder Yi was at the spirit of the saber realm, but after that slash, his realm dropped to the saber force realm. More importantly, this action of damaging one's foundation was almost irreversible. In other words, even if Elder Yi survived, it was almost impossible for him to cultivate to the spirit of the saber realm again, unless he had some heaven-defying herbs to help him repair the damage to his foundation. Elder Yi was known as the Mad Blade, so his pursuit of the saber was needless to say. Sacrificing his saber realm as a sacrifice, the price of this slash was too high. Huh. Elder Yi laughed wildly and said, "You three scums, you want to take my life with such little strength?" Wishful thinking. Mo Feng and the other two clutched their chests as they were seriously injured. They looked at the person in front of them with deep fear in their eyes. The people behind them couldn't help but retreat. Even the three Spirit Wheel Realm warriors were defeated. How would the others dare to take even half a step forward? "Let's go." Elder Yi immediately sent a voice transmission to Nie Tian to prepare to leave. Nie Tian nodded. Elder Ye's attack had shocked everyone. It was a good time to leave. However, just as they turned around, a silver-haired figure blocked their way, burning the saber spirit and destroying his own foundation. "Yi Linyan, you really are the frenzy blade." Tawny's sinister eyes swept across Nie Tian's group as a cold, killing intent radiated from her body. She had the eye of the Scar of Dusk, so of course she could tell why Elder Yi was able to unleash such a shocking attack. This time, she had come for the Scarlet Soul Red Lotus. At this time, it was impossible for her to give up. "Tawny, the person you're looking for is me, and it has nothing to do with them. Get them to leave, and I'll go with you," Gu Wuyo said loudly, not wanting to implicate everyone. "Sure." Tawny raised her eyebrows and smiled. "As long as you come with me, I won't stop them. I'll go with you." Gu Wuyo wanted to use himself to exchange for a way out for everyone. "Gu Wuyo, come back." Nie Tianling shouted coldly and signaled Duanmu Lu to stop Gu Wuyo. Tawny had already exposed the methods Elder Yi used, so even if she really let Nie Tian's group go, Diao Jingde and the others would not agree. Commander Wu, Yi Linyan destroyed his own cultivation to unleash that attack. He has no other methods now and is no different from a cripple. "Quickly kill him." Sure enough, Diao Jingde's sharp voice was heard, and his face was full of excitement. Destroyed his own cultivation. Mo Feng immediately understood something. No wonder Yi Linyan could unleash such a shocking attack, even though he was seriously injured and exhausted. He actually sacrificed his own cultivation to do it. "Yi Linyan, do you have another move after destroying your own cultivation?" Qiu Wuhin also came to a realization. He smiled coldly, and his aura became much more tyrannical. "You can try." Elder Ye's face darkened, but he still did not retreat. He pointed to the ground and said, "It's still the same words. Those who cross this line will be killed without mercy." "Arrogant." Qiu Wuhin sneered and glanced at Mo Feng and Wu Meng. The latter two understood, and the three of them attacked at the same time. Boom! Three murderous auras with the most ruthless killing intent suddenly rushed out and pressed toward Elder Yi. Everyone was stunned at this moment, and their hearts jumped to their throats. The remaining saber energy in Elder Ye's body spread out, and the unyielding saber spirit condensed into a saber shield, covering his whole body. At the same time, the Grim Reaper's chain behind him stretched out like a long snake, whistling toward Mo Feng and Qiu Wuhin. Bang! With a muffled sound, the saber spirit energy directly collapsed under the powerful attack, and Elder Yi was sent flying. Crack, crack, crack! The sound of bones breaking came from midair, and blood splattered. The figure in the air was like a broken leaf. After falling to the ground, there was no more movement, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Ah! At the same time, two blood-curdling screams sounded. Mo Feng and Qiu Wuhin were hit by the Grim Reaper's chain, and their shoulders were directly penetrated. Sharp pain spread throughout their bodies, and blood gushed out. Even under such circumstances, Old Yi was still able to heavily injure Mo Feng and Xiao Wuan. His strength was extraordinarily terrifying. Ha! Frenzied Saber Yi Lin Yun, you're finally dead. Seeing that Elder Yi was lying on the ground without any movement, Mo Feng couldn't help but laugh loudly. Killing the #1 madman in the 3,000 small worlds gave him a perverted sense of satisfaction. Swish! At this time, a figure suddenly flew over. Nie Tian's figure was extremely fast, and it was quite strange. Taking advantage of the moment when everyone was stunned, he flashed behind Diao Jingde, directly grabbed the latter's neck, and shouted in a deep voice, "Everyone retreat." Just now, Nie Tian didn't make a move to save Elder Yi, because he was waiting for such an opportunity. Even if he made a move to save Elder Yi, everyone else would still not be able to escape. Therefore, only by taking a hostage could they fight for a chance of survival. Commander Wu, save me. Diao Jingde was too excited that he didn't react in time. When he felt that it was difficult to breathe, he let out a strange cry and shouted for help. Seeing that Diao Jingde had fallen into Nie Tian's hands, Wu Meng panicked and anxiously shouted, "Don't kill him! Retreat!" Nie Tian spat out 2 words cold. I'll retreat. Wu Meng hurriedly retreated, indicating to Nie Tian not to be impulsive. The others also retreated. Although Mo Feng and Xiao Wuhan were unwilling, they didn't dare to take Diao Jingde's life as a joke. After all, the other party's status was too high, and the Alchemist Guild couldn't afford to offend them. Nie Tian walked over with Diao Jingde, glanced at Tawny, and said cold, "You retreat too." Humph! Tawny smiled cold, and said, "Nie Tian City Lord, is it useful to use his life to threaten me?" Tawny retreat. Right at this moment, another figure appeared. It was actually Wan Qirong. "My lord." Tawny didn't expect that Wan Qirong would appear at this time, and had a puzzled look on her face. "Retreat," Wan Qirong said indifferently with a cold face. Yes, Tawny was unwilling in her heart, but she didn't dare to disobey Wan Qirong's order and could only retreat. Chapter 495. Nie Tian noticed that there was something wrong with Wan Qirong's expression, which made him suspicious of Diao Jingde's identity. Previously, Nie Tian already had his suspicions about Diao Jingde. As a red-clothed elder of the Alchemist Association, it was strange that he could find someone from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Now, it was confirmed that Chaos City was the lair of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, and the Pavilion Master was the City Lord of Chaos City. Wan Qirong's attitude towards Diao Jingde made Nie Tian even more certain that Diao Jingde was from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Since Tawny, the Great Shu Imperial Tutor, was from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, it wasn't strange that Diao Jingde was from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. The Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion was indeed the #1 assassin organization in the 3,000 small worlds. They even had people from the Alchemist Association. Duanmu Lu, take Elder Yi and leave first. Nie Tian gripped Diao Jingde's neck tightly. If anyone else made any strange moves, he would definitely make a move without the slightest hesitation. Teacher, we'll leave first, Duanmu Lu replied. He carried Elder Yi on his back and left without hesitation. The others could only watch helplessly as they left. Diao Jingde's countenance was ghastly pale, while his eyes were filled with dense terror. At this moment, he was actually not looking at Wu Meng, but at Wan Qirong. This undoubtedly showed that in his opinion, the person who could save him was Wan Qirong and not Wu Meng. This detail was captured by Nie Tian and confirmed the guess in his heart. Nie Tian's guess was right. Diao Jingde was indeed from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Nie Tian, you better not kill him. Wan Qirong frowned slightly. If it wasn't for Diao Jingde's special significance to the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, she wouldn't care about his life or death. The reason why Diao Jingde could become an elder of the Alchemist Association was because of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion scheme. Back then, there was a red-robed elder of the Alchemist Guild who was killed by the assassins of the Ling Xian Heavenly Pavilion for no reason. It was to create an opportunity for Diao Jingde to rise up. If Diao Jingde did not become a red-robed elder that year, then the red-robed elders of the Alchemist Guild would continue to die until Jiao Zhengde became a red-robed elder. In fact, in the Alchemist Guild, there were quite a number of alchemists from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Those people were all Jiao Zhengde's subordinates. Although Jiao Zhengde's strength wasn't high, he was a 100% 6th-tier alchemist. Hence, he was a purple gold rank assassin in the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, second only to diamond rank assassins and black emperor rank assassins. The Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion was an extremely secretive assassin organization. An assassin would only know his superiors and subordinates. Take Jiao Zhengde, for example. He only knew of Wan Qirong, but not the pavilion master. He only knew of the people below him, but not the people below him. Of course, there were exceptions. For example, Tani was also a member of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. She was only a gold rank assassin, one rank lower than Jiao Zhengde, but she knew of Wan Qirong and the pavilion master. That was because she was an assassin personally groomed by the pavilion master. Jiao Zhengde was a big chess piece that the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion had planted in the Alchemist Guild. If he died, it would be a big blow to the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. You better not chase after me. Nie Tianling laughed, seeing that Duanmu Lu and the rest had already walked far away. The corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile. Now, everyone retreat 100 meters away. My lord, save me. At this moment, Jiao Zhengde could no longer hold it in and finally asked Wan Qirong for help. The fox's tail has been revealed. You, a red-robed elder, are also a member of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Nie Tian laughed coldly in his heart. His eyes flashed with cold, killing intent as he bellowed. Wan Qirong, retreat. If you don't retreat, I'll turn him into a corpse. Wan Qirong frowned. She suppressed the anger in her heart. After pondering for a moment, she decided to retreat and said coldly, Nie Tian, the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion is not someone you can offend. If you dare to kill him, the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion will chase you to the ends of the earth. At this time, Wan Qirong no longer had any scruples and directly revealed her identity. City Lord Wan, don't you think this kind of threat is very childish? Nie Tian sneered as he retreated. Did the other party treat him as a 3-year-old child? Even if Nie Tian let Jiao Zhengde go, the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion would chase him to the ends of the earth. The Death God's order had been issued. As long as Nie Tian was not dead, the assassination mission would never stop. When the others saw Wan Qirong retreating, they all retreated as well. Mo Feng, Qiu Wuheng, and the rest were puzzled. Wan Qirong took the initiative to admit that she was a member of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Moreover, she did it in front of the 4 major families and the Alchemist Guild. Wasn't this equivalent to exposing that Chaos City was the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion? Even until now, Mo Feng and Qiu Wuheng still hadn't realized that Jiao Zhengde was also a member of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. In fact, they didn't dare to think so. The Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion and the Alchemist Guild were 2 extremely opposing organizations. The difference between a red-robed elder and an assassin was too great. How could they be equated? Wan Qirong and the rest quickly retreated 100 meters away. Nie Tian's figure moved and retreated dozens of meters. The corner of his mouth rose slightly as a cold, killing intent flashed on his face. What do you want? I'm a red-robed elder of the Alchemist Guild and a purple gold assassin of the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. You can't kill me. Jiao Zhengde sensed the bone-chilling, killing intent. He was so scared that his voice trembled. He turned around and looked at Nie Tian, but what he saw was an extremely cold face. Jiao Zhengde, you didn't expect this moment, right? The cold laughter was mixed with decisive, killing intent. Nie Tian suddenly exerted force in his hand and directly lifted Jiao Zhengde into the air. He didn't care about Wan Qirong's threat at all. In any case, the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion wouldn't let him go. He would kill Jiao Zhengde first. Nie Tian quickly stopped. Wan Qirong saw this scene and shouted. Her figure burst out. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Jiao Zhengde, I'll return it to you. Nie Tian exerted force in his hand. With a crack, Jiaojingda's neck was directly broken. He lost all signs of life and was then thrown away by Nie Tian like a dead dog. Wan Shirong reached out to catch Jiaojingda, but it was a corpse that was rapidly turning cold and stiff. She suddenly thought of something and looked at Jiaojingda's corpse nervously. However, she didn't find anything. She cursed in a deep voice, "Nie Tian, you're despicable." However, Nie Tian's figure had already disappeared. In just an instant, there was no aura left. Everyone reacted at this moment and walked over. "Master Diao." Wu Meng looked at Jiaojingda's corpse and wailed. He didn't protect the red-robed elder. Even if he could return alive, he would definitely receive the most severe punishment from the Dan Marshall Hall. He really killed him. Xiao Wuhin walked over and still couldn't believe that Nie Tian really dared to kill the red-robed elder of the Alchemist Guild in public. This was too crazy. The Alchemist Guild was a force that wasn't any weaker than the four major clans. A dignified, red-robed elder died, just like that. It was too ridiculous. Nie Tian is too crazy. Mo Feng also had a look of disbelief. Killing a red-robed elder was something that even the four major clans' inner court elders or clan heads wouldn't dare to do.